Good afternoon. I want to call the meeting to order for the afternoon of October 8th, 2019. For those of you who are watching this at home, do not adjust your TV. I'm not Mayor Sam Licardo. I'm Vice Mayor Chabby Jones, and I will be conducting and leading this meeting today. I want to introduce our invocator. Today's invocation will be delivered by the San Jose Youth Shakespeare. Councilmember Foley will tell us more.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. San Jose Youth Shakespeare is a local theater conservancy that operates out of District 9 locations, such as Hoagie Park and Camden Community Center. Their cast of young people ranging from ages 8 to 21 perform full-length productions of Shakespeare's plays. San Jose Youth Shakespeare seeks to establish a strong sense of community and inspire lifelong enjoyment of Shakespeare's work. The company is led by artistic director Audrey Rumsby and sustained by the cast, production crew, and their families. San Jose Youth Shakespeare has workshop programs with local schools, Girl Scout troops, and homes for the disabled. Every week, they visit the Hope Center in San Jose to teach seniors with disabilities how to express themselves and connect with one another by acting out famous speeches. That sounds like fun. I am passionate about providing performing arts opportunities for our youth. I am grateful to the San Jose Youth Shakespeare for bringing Shakespeare's work to life and bringing joy to our community through their enlightening performances and dedication to volunteerism. Thank you, San Jose Youth Shakespeare, for performing for us today. They will now perform a selection of scenes from their recent productions.
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Rumsby, and I am the artistic director of this terrific San Jose-based Shakespeare company, and I am so thrilled to be here today with these terrific kids. I want to thank the mayor and our district representative, Pam Foley, for having us today and for creating such a terrific city for us to work and create in. I want to introduce you to our terrific performers today. I have Griffin Sanders, give it a little wave. I've got Max Klaus, Sharon McCauley, Stella Scott, and Violet Sanders. And today we have the unusual privilege of having one of our Shakespeare dads with us as our troubadour. This is Simon Scott with us. So thank you again so very much for having us. Our slogan at our Shakespeare company has been for the last 15 years, what's your power? And the reason for that is because over the last decade and a half, we've been asking ourselves and our young people that in the rehearsal room and on stage. So that's what we tried to create here at our Shakespeare company, is a sense of power. We believe at our very, very core that every child is born with a unique sense of individuality and magnificence, and all it needs is just a door, a doorway, an open door to creating that magnificence, a permission from other kids around them and from their parents and from their community to be that magnificence. And that's what we do here at our company. So thank you again so much for having us, and here's some Shakespeare for you.
All the world's a stage. All the world's a stage.
All the world's a stage.
All the world's a stage.
All the world's a stage.
Alack, why am I sent for to a king before I have shook off these regal thoughts wherewith I reigned? I have hardly yet learned to flatter, insinuate, bow, and bend my knee. Give sorrow leave a while to tutor me to this submission. And yet I well remember the favors of these men, were they not mine? Did they not sometime cry, all hail to me? So Judas did to Christ, but he, in 12, found truth in all but one. I, in 12,000, none. God save the king. Will no man say amen? Am I both priest and clerk? Well then, amen. God save the king.
This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, tomorrow is St. Crispian. And in their flowing drinks shall we be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he that sheds his blood with me today shall be my brother, be he ne'er so vile, this day will gentle his condition, and Englishmen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhood's cheap whilst any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's day.
I know you all, and you will a while uphold the unyoked humor of your idleness. Yet herein will I imitate the sun, who doth permit the base contagious clouds to smother up his beauty from the world, that, when he please again to be himself, being wanted, he may be more wondered at, by breaking through the foul and ugly mists of vapors that did seem to strangle him. If all the year were playing holidays, to sport would be as tedious as to work. But when they seldom come, they wished for come, and nothing pleaseth but rare accidents. So, when this loose behavior I throw off, and pay the debt I never promised, by more better than my word I am.
Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles by opposing men them.
You do look, my son, in a moved sort, as if you were dismayed. Be cheerful, sir.
Our revels are now ended. These our actors, as I foretold to you, are all spirits, and are melted into air, into thin air, and like this brief pageant faded.
The cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the great globe itself.
Yea, all which it inherit shall dissolve, and like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind.
We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep.
For those of you who are able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilmember Carrasco, please join me at the podium, and we will present a proclamation for the National Arts and Humanities Month.
I'm inviting all of my council colleagues because I know that they have a lot of art, and they're also lovers of art, but they have a lot of art in their own districts, respectfully. Good afternoon, everyone. October is National Arts and Humanities Month, a coast-to-coast collective recognition of the importance of culture in America. National Arts and Humanities Month was launched by Americans for the Arts more than 30 years ago as National Arts Week in honor of the 20th anniversary of the National Endowment. It has since been reestablished as a month-long celebration, and it deserves this extra time and attention, focusing on the arts at local, state, and national levels, encouraging individuals and organizations to participate in the arts, allowing governments and businesses to show their support of the arts, and raising public awareness about the role of the arts and humanities which play in our communities and our lives. Here in the city of San Jose, we have dedicated staff working to bring more art to our city. We are working together to make art more accessible for vulnerable communities, to support local artists, and to celebrate our rich cultural diversity through the arts. As a liaison to the Arts Commission, my office is currently working to help promote the wonderful opportunities and resources available to local artists. Recently, El Comité, a collective of activists and artists, has worked with the Historical Preservation Committee to obtain a historical designation of 7 of our treasured Chicano murals. I'm also working with our partners in Alum Rock to designate a cultural district so that we can celebrate our rich cultural history along the corridor and provide additional opportunities for artists to thrive beyond the downtown borders. And with that, I now proclaim October National Arts and Humanities Month. We have with us Carrie Adams Hapner, one of our heroes when it comes to arts, and her wonderful team to receive the proclamation. But before Vice Mayor Jones hands that over to you, Carrie, would you like to say a few words? Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Carrasco, for your leadership and your commitment and your passion for the arts. So, yes, yeah, that's okay. And I want to thank all of the council and the city manager for your support of arts and humanities. We're also joined today by members of the Arts Commission. We have our Vice Chair, Ramona Snyder, and Smita Garg. We also have Michael Ogilvie, Karen Park, and Emily Sevier from the Office of Cultural Affairs. As part of National Arts and Humanities Month, the Office of Cultural Affairs and 31 creative partners are sponsoring a citywide 31-day creativity challenge called We Create 408. It's designed to inspire you and celebrate San Jose. So participating in the challenge is really easy. You go to wecreate408.org, and all you need is to sign up with an email address, and you're going to receive an email every day during the month of October with a different prompt for a creative action you can do on your own. And we're also going to send out information about a related event from one of our partners. So when you post your response online, you want to also tag We Create 408, and then you'll be eligible to receive discounts or giveaways from our partners. So it's really easy. It takes less than 10 minutes a day. And I also want to thank the Packard Foundation for their generous support of this initiative. So today's creative prompt is really fun. What's one of your best childhood memories? Draw your memory or post a photo that evokes the experience, tagging We Create 408. And I also want to recognize our partner for today. It's Chopsticks Alley, who offers drawing lessons in both Vietnamese and English. So I invite all of you to join in on the fun. I want to see all of your fun childhood photos and drawings. You'll see mine. Maybe I'll be on my pony or something like that. And again, you know, I want to just recognize the San Jose Youth Shakespeare, who really exemplifies the power of creativity in our everyday lives. Because you heard the artistic director saying the power of all of us individually and how that really comes out through the arts. So again, thank you. Thank you to the council. We really appreciate all of your support.
Now, Councilmember Arenas will present a proclamation for Bullying Prevention Month.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. Every October, all communities across our country unite in a nationwide campaign to raise awareness and promote dialogue to prevent bullying and keep our children and youth safe. Thank you so much for coming down So I have some very special guests with me, starting with our superintendent of Evergreen School District, who is Emmy Flores, as well as our principal, Ryan Hansen Vera, and project specialist, Marina Doxy. And I think we also have Patty Andrade here, PTA president, but I think she's hiding. Okay, so the reason I have all of you ladies here is because we want to really showcase some of the work that you've done at Quimby Oak. But before I talk a little bit about that, I want to just go over bullying. And you all know that it just doesn't affect our children. It affects people of all ages, race, color, economic status. It really doesn't matter. Although we focus on our youth and our children because we want to have a really healthy start. It's especially important to bring awareness because nowadays we all communicate online and through our social media accounts. How many of us have more than one social media account? Oh, come on. All right, we won't make you take a pledge. But you know, bullying, especially cyberbullying, really takes a significant toll on personal and academic lives of children, making the prevention of bullying an important responsibility of San Jose, including parents like myself, youth, educators, leaders, and community organizations. And that's why I'm really pleased to have this group of women here today for their work to promote, to prevent bullying year-round and promote kindness through their partnership with, okay, write this down, everyone, hashtag I can help and hashtag digital for good. And maybe we can do a blend of the 408 I create hashtag. I probably got that one wrong, but when you take a look back at some of your most fond childhood memories, we don't think about some of the really terrible ones, right? And so we want to continue to have really wonderful memories for our children and for the generations to come, and so we really need to have some fundamentals when it comes to social media. So I want to thank them for all of their amazing work to advocate on behalf of the well-being of our students and raising awareness and serious consequences of bullying, to cultivate safe, diverse schools and communities. And before I have Vice Mayor provide that proclamation, I'd like to ask if one of you would like to share some words with us. Wonderful.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Hansen Vera, and I am the principal of Quimby Oak Middle School in Evergreen School District in San Jose. I first would like to thank Councilmember Sylvia Arenas for including Quimby Oak in such an important proclamation and declaring October Bullying Prevention Month. So students today are digital natives. The 7th and 8th grade students I work with can't remember life without the internet, a cell phone, or a social media platform. This has left schools and districts rethinking education and educational systems for digital natives who view technology as an essential part in how they communicate. The role of the teacher is fundamentally changing, and more classrooms are becoming versed in digital tools that mirror what seamlessly takes place in the workplace. Districts, like Evergreen, are progressive in their approaches to bridge technology with learning in the classroom. Many of our campuses, like mine, Quimby Oak, support a one-to-one digital device model where students and teachers engage and collaborate through Google platforms, video, photo, and music applications, and they regularly use and engage learners and develop projects while online. While all of this is the wave of the future and the direction that we should be going in, there is also a great responsibility for schools to educate teens and young people about how to communicate and collaborate online in safe, appropriate, and responsible ways. Someone's digital footprint today is just as important as their resume. The choices students make online now will affect their futures. Social media is a tool that enables people to connect on levels with global impact. Not only are we educating students how to operate digital devices for the purpose of an educational gain, we also need to educate and hone the social skills needed to be digital users that are empathetic, equitable, and most of all, kind. To address this at Quimby, we've partnered, like mentioned, with a wonderful organization, #ICanHelp, and that is from the website icanhelpdeletenegativity.org. And this organization's mission is to empower students to use social media in a very positive way. Quimby, with this collaboration, has launched trainings not only for students and teachers, but parents about digital safety and how to positively act, collaborate, and communicate online. This has also led to numerous implementations to address online harassment and cyberbullying. We launched the Lobo Helpline, a digital and anonymous reporting tool where students can immediately reach out and seek help, report, and document online issues. In turn, the leadership at Quimby has reshaped procedures that include online interactions between students, and we can now address cyberbullying head-on. We're proud to announce that we've seen an increase in student advocacy online and in their abilities to not only report, but to act. So thank you to the City of San Jose and Councilmember Arenas for bringing such attention to this issue and supporting schools through their initiatives to make classrooms safer and also environments virtually online just as safe and kind. Thank you.
Councilmember Camus, please join me at the podium and we will present a proclamation for International Nonviolence Day.
Today we celebrate the 150th anniversary of the birth of Mahatma Gandhi and his legacy to nonviolence. His philosophy has influenced and inspired leaders around the world, including Cesar Chavez, who maintained his commitment to nonviolence even in the face of violent attacks. Gandhi once said, "I object to violence because when it appears to do good, the good is only temporary. The evil it does is permanent." This legacy inspires the United Nations to designate October 2nd, Gandhi's birthday, as the International Day of Nonviolence, in recognition of his immense contributions to human rights and the struggle for freedom across the world. You know, as a refugee from Lebanon myself, I know firsthand the impact that violence can have on a people, and I'm honored to commemorate this occasion and spread the message of nonviolence that Gandhi gave us. Accepting this proclamation today is Uday Kapoor with Indians for Collective Action, and I'm hoping he can join us and say a few words.
On behalf of the local Indian community, it is my humble privilege to accept this gracious proclamation passed by the San Jose City Council to commemorate the 150th birth anniversary, one of the most important figures of our era, Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, who has not heard about him? Accompanying me are several community leaders: Raj Desai, CEO of Indian Community Center; Reshma Nigam, the current president, and Bhupen Mehta, past president of India for Collective Action, ICA, and Dr. Sulochana Lulla, retired Kaiser physician who has led a Gandhi camp for youth for the last 35 years. It is, most of the young people really know about this and attend this camp. It's a great opportunity for them. Your proclamation has appropriately designated October 2nd, Mahatma Gandhi's birth date, as the International Day of Nonviolence in recognition of his immense contributions to the human rights and the struggle for freedoms across the world, starting with India, through nonviolent means and satyagraha, or truth force. It is by far the most difficult means and requires extraordinary courage and forbearance. Those of you who have seen the movie Gandhi can attest to that. As Albert Einstein once said of Gandhi, generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this ever in flesh and blood walked upon this earth. Mahatma Gandhi's vision of community service, hope, unconditional love, compassion, and nonviolent action is needed in our times as never before. I thank Councilman Kamis in making this proclamation possible. In this context, I also commend the city in its actions to address the scourge of homelessness and housing for the dispossessed. Safe lodging is a basic human right, and we need to do everything possible to house the people that are dispossessed. I'm a board member of NAMI Santa Clara County, responsible for supportive housing, and would love to partner with you to help the families. Thank you very much.
So now we're on to orders of the day. Does anyone on the council have any changes to the printed agenda?
Yes, Vice Mayor, I do. I'd like to move item 1.4, which is a presentation of accommodation to the Britannia Arms, up to 3:30, as I think our meeting might end before then, but I don't want to jinx it.
All right. Also, the mayor had a request to defer item 2.16 to the next council meeting on 10/22. Can the maker of the motion include those two changes? All right, let's vote. All right, closed session report, city attorney.
I need to make a quick announcement for the audience that the votes that reflect Mayor Liccardo are actually Vice Mayor Jones for the rest of the meeting.
All right, closed session report, city attorney.
The council met in closed session, but there is no report.
Thank you. Next is the consent calendar. Are there any items that the council wants to pull from the consent calendar? 2.2 and 2.5. Any other items? All right, can I get a motion for the remainder of the consent calendar? All right, item 2.2.
Member Davis?
Okay, item 2.2.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. When we approved this, this action item September 17th, we had requested that the staff study the cost and impact of ADU construction and bring this back to council. Page 68 of on the transcript. The motion specified that the analysis may be brought back in the form of an information memo I did not see this in the supplemental memo. Is staff aware of that?
I'm not aware. I'm actually having trouble tracking the issue that we're talking about right now. Yeah, so I need to get, because my packet for item 2.2 does not include any final ordinances.
Yeah. I don't have a 2.2.
So I don't think we have a 2.2 today.
There's nothing.
Sorry
there's
about
nothing there.
that. I'm looking at another agenda. I apologize.
All right, we'll keep moving.
Sorry about that.
2.5.
I guess I'll make a motion, since I pulled it out, I'll make a motion to approve 2.2.
There's
We
nothing
can do-
on there.
There's nothing to approve.
There's nothing to approve.
Very good.
Let's keep moving. 2.5.
Sorry, thanks, Vice Mayor. Over the weekend, I joined about 18 different elected officials. No city money was involved. It was a personal trip. But I went down to El Paso, Texas, to visit the U.S.-Mexico border. And I just wanted to share because we went to visit a place called Annunciation House, where they provide temporary housing for migrants passing through the border, awaiting asylum hearings. But our group of 25 people outnumbered the migrants there. And some of them were headed towards California. I saw folks in ankle bracelets waiting their hearing, and they can go anywhere in the U.S. if they have a sponsor. And then we crossed into Juarez and visited some sites there, not U.S. detention centers, but nonprofits and faith houses taking care of folks from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Cuba, and even Africa. I'm told that there are about 15,000 people amassed at the border, and I guess I just wanted to share this because I asked folks, what can I do to help? And they said, just let us know we're down here. The U.S. has this policy now, implemented recently, that at El Paso, although you can still ask for asylum, you have to wait in Mexico. And then the U.S. also has a metering process where they only accept maybe 5 to 20 people to show up at the border. So basically, if you're coming up through Mexico, you say, I'd like to seek asylum in the United States. They say, come back in 4 months at this time at 4 a.m. and we'll take you. And in the interim, you're just stuck in Mexico. So that's kind of the situation on the border. I was glad to go down there and see it firsthand. We can't do much with it at the city, but I just wanted to share what I learned and raise awareness about that. So with that, I'll move to approve the 2.5.
It's been moved. Can I get a second? All right. Let's vote. Yes. So next is item 10.1, a land use consent item that we can vote on now, or we can wait till 6 o'clock and come back and vote on it later. All right. Let's vote. Okay, next is item 3.1, report of the city manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I actually have 2 updates to do today. The first is on the PG&E public safety power shutoff, and wanted to give the public and the council an update on where we're at. So as we've been informed, the public safety power shutoff may begin in our city as early as midnight tonight, affecting mostly parts of the east and south San Jose. And this is due to predicted weather patterns of high wind and low humidity. This weather pattern is expected to continue through possibly noon on Thursday. So we've been preparing for these scenarios over the last 4 months, and we've created a power vulnerability plan. And this plan is being put into play as I speak. We have partially activated the EOC in City Hall over the last day or so. We have fully activated our communications team, and we will be doing an activation of the EOC tonight at 10 p.m. PG&E will also be opening one large community resource center at Avaya Stadium, operating from 8 a.m. tomorrow to 6 p.m. They will be providing water, charging stations, and cooling devices. We are opening 3 community resource centers starting tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Those are the Southside, Mayfair, and Camden community centers. We also will be providing water, charging stations, and snacks. English, Vietnamese, and Spanish-speaking staff will be on hand at those resource centers. And as I said, the goal is to provide basic resources for residents affected by a public safety power shutoff. All of our community resource centers will remain open until the event is over. I just wanted to share with you kind of key messages that we're providing to the public. First is to shelter in place if possible. If you're experiencing an outage, stay home or with friends if needed. Purchase extra supplies such as batteries, flashlights, and water. Our community resource centers will be available to replenish water and snacks and charge electrical devices. Let's see here. For affected areas, we will expect water, sewer, and trash recycling to continue their operations. We might see slight delays due to traffic on the streets, especially when it comes to traffic collection. We are actively communicating with nonprofits, with schools, faith-based organizations to make sure the messages get out. We're also coordinating with the county and PG&E and other agencies to ensure all of our residents are properly prepared, and we will continue to keep all of you informed on this issue. We plan to do another media update today at 4:45, and I just want to thank all of our staff and our partners for all the work they're doing to keep our city prepared. Thank you. The next update I'm going to do down at the podium. I don't know if I can take any questions on that first item.
Since it's not agendized, they can ask a quick question, but there can be no discussion.
Okay. Are there any quick questions on that update?
Let me also tell the council that it is possible, if the council decides, we can post a special meeting, which only requires a 24-hour notice, to the extent that the council would like to have a more thorough discussion of it tomorrow or the following day. So you can let us know if that's something the council would like.
Okay, for the next item, I'll be going down to the podium, and I believe the Vice Mayor is joining me. Okay, we're here to kick off to the city's annual combined giving campaign. I would like to thank our city librarian and the library department for taking this on for this next year. Also like to thank the library's workforce development analyst, Alida Egyptico. She's going to be the citywide coordinator, so thank you for taking this work on. Last year, city employees donated $150,000, contributed over 4,000 hours of service, and donated over 330 in-kind items for our community here in San Jose. I'd also like to thank our 4 foundations that partner with us: the United Way, America's Best Local Charities, Community Health Charities, and EarthShare California. And I invite Jill to say a few words.
Thanks, Dave. I also want to thank our mayor and our city council members for supporting this program. The library is very excited to be leading the 2019 Combined Giving Campaign, and our theme this year is Because of You. So the Giving Campaign is rooted in the understanding that each of us has the power to make a real difference in San Jose and throughout the Bay Area. Dave mentioned that last year's accomplishment was raising $150,000. Well, our goal for 2019 is to reach at least a 5% increase over that, which is a very awkward number of around $159,000. I think we should just do $160,000. I just decided that right now. Every donation will make a difference, regardless if it's money, time, or in-kind items. The charities involved sincerely appreciate everything that we can give. So I'm going to encourage every single City of San Jose employee to participate in the campaign this year in whatever ways are most meaningful to you. So I'm confident that because of you, the campaign can reach and surpass our goal. Remember that small, simple acts enacted by many can create great change. So let's be the change that we would like to see in our communities this year. So I want to thank again our council, our city manager's office, our fantastic team of Aletia Siako, I had to try to say it, and Stani Picheva from, who's a Senior Director of Workplace Engagement at the United Way Bay Area. Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is item 3.3, Procurement Card Expenditures Audit Report.
Good afternoon, Joe Royce, City Auditor. I'm in the box with Julia Cooper from the Department of Finance and John Cicerelli from the Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services. Gitanjali Mandrakar, Juan Barragan, and Shirley Wong from my office are in the audience. They had worked on the audit. So the City of San Jose has a procurement card or a P card program whereby some city staff are issued Visa cards for routine purchases. The purpose of the program is to streamline the acquisition of small dollar value goods and services. The overall program is overseen by the Finance Department, but oversight for transactions is decentralized to city departments. The city's P-card policy spells out rules for P-card usage and outlines roles and responsibilities for management of the program. For example, cardholders are expected to retain receipts from the purchases and in some cases receive approvals prior to certain types of purchases. Departments also have approving officials who oversee purchases within their departments. In fiscal year 2018-19, roughly 990 cardholders made over 50,000 P-card purchases totaling $14 million. The objective of this audit was to review P-card usage across the city. We've conducted regular audits of P-card transactions over the years, most recently in 2014. To complete our audit work, audit staff reviewed over 4,000 P-card transactions that occurred between May and June of 2018, spread across all city departments. The first finding was that most P-card transactions complied with city policy. However, policy clarifications for some types of purchases are needed. While our review of P-card transactions showed that most adhered to the city's P-card policy, some exceptions were observed. These included recurring purchases of water for personal use, technology purchases made without approval from the Information Technology Department or IT, and others. Many of the exceptions observed had also been seen in prior audits and are the subject of open audit recommendations. We also noted that several former city employees had active P-cards after their separation date from the city, and that many P-card holders did not complete a required annual recertification quiz. We have two recommendations to address those issues. Lastly, because city employees must be aware of and comply with many different city policies and internal guidelines for P-card purchases, the administration should clarify some policies and make them more easily accessible for city staff in an easy, user-friendly format. Our second finding is that the city can better monitor expenditures from commonly used vendors. Finance negotiates with various vendors to receive preferred pricing and terms. Since 2007-8, Office Depot has had an agreement with the city to provide preferred pricing, discounts, and volume rebates for office supplies. However, it appears that the city did not correctly receive all of the outlined benefits. From July 2014 to June of 2018, we estimate that the impact from lost rebates and discounts may have been at least $176,000. We recommend that Finance work with Office Depot to correct past issues and develop a process to better oversee the agreement with Office Depot. Additionally, Finance has established other open purchase orders that provide competitive pricing or other incentives. However, P-card data show that these have not always been used by city staff. Finally, because there have been significant levels of purchases with other vendors, including Amazon and Home Depot, there may be opportunities to explore preferred pricing and terms with those vendors. Our third finding is that Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services, or PRNS, can strengthen oversight of its P-card program. PRNS provides San Jose residents with diverse services such as operating and maintaining community centers, parks, and trails, and providing a wide range of programs to San Jose residents. The department's P card purchases reflect those diverse services. In 2018-19, PRNS had the most P card expenditures in the city, accounting for about 25% of total P card purchases overall. In addition, PRNS had the most P card holders in the city. Similar to the citywide transaction review, we noted that some P card purchases in PRNS did not comply with city policies. In addition, PRNS incurred $13,000 in late payment fees. Because of the volume of activity, the large number of P card holders, and the dispersion of programming across the city, we recommend that PRNS reevaluate the number of P cards needed in the department and develop internal guidelines for P card usage to help staff comply with city policies. The report includes 9 recommendations, and we'd like to thank the Departments of Finance, PRNS, Public Works, IT, and others for their time and insight during the audit process. The administration has reviewed the report, and their response is shown in the yellow pages. We ask that you accept the report, and we're happy to answer any questions. I'll now turn it over to Julia and John.
Thank you, Joe. Julia Cooper, Director of Finance. We thank the Auditor's Office for conducting this regular audit process. As you can tell from the report, there aren't any egregious issues associated with the P card, which we're happy to report, and it shows that the policies and procedures that we put in place are working. A number of the recommendations suggested have already been implemented. The rest of the recommendations we expect to be implemented before the end of calendar year 2020. So with that, John and I are available to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you, Joe and Julia and team for that report. I see one council member who would like to speak. Council Member Esparza, please.
Yes, a couple of points and then a question. I just wanted to mention that the oversight on the Office Depot contract is especially concerning when we take into account the nearly $80 million paid by Office Depot in order to settle a whistleblower lawsuit brought under the California False Claim Act. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that on page 30 in the section that focuses on PRNS, the purchase of gift cards is raised as an issue, and there are recommendations under that. And so in an effort to better understand the P card process, my office requested the District 7 P card packets for 2018. In that, we were able to discover that purchases over $5,000 in gift cards were made, and those gift cards ranged in value from $20, $25 to $40 each. The purchases were primarily to Target, but also included Marshalls and TJ Maxx. We also found the purchase of gift cards in packs of 3 in the amounts of $20 each. There were also purchases of gift cards for entertainment and electronics and the amount of $25. So these purchases took place from February 2018 to December of 2018. So it was obviously not an isolated incident, but rather it was the norm. I focus on gift cards given how these should raise red flags due to tracking issues, and I'm not even covering other purchases that were made. But my question, I have 2 questions. One is to the city attorney, which is how do we reconcile, how do we as a public entity reconcile the legal issues around the gift of public funds in this issue?
Well, it's going to be important to look at the details of them. What were they used for? Because I know that in some instances, the city does provide gift cards as part of community benefit. Sometimes, let's say when there was a flood,
sure,
we were helping out. So it really is important to determine, if to the extent possible, what those gift cards were used for.
And so if gift cards were used in a community event and handed out without any tracking, would that have been a gift of public funds?
Well, again, we'd have to look and see if there is no trail on it, then it's questionable. But again, we'd have to do at least our due diligence to determine in what event it occurred and how it was spent before we could actually come to a conclusion. So we would have to do our due diligence in determining at what point, what event, and how the cards were used.
So you could do your due diligence with the city clerk's office and how those gift card purchases were made in 2018 for District 7 funds.
Correct. I think most of the council members go through the city clerk in their acquisition of for their contracts and acquisition of funds. So we'd have to work with the city clerk to determine if there's a way of determining what happened to those gift cards.
Thank you. And then this is a question for the finance department. Again, so typically it's a best practice around gift cards to track it, to make sure that that they're being treated like cash. And so are there now better guidelines around the purchases and disbursement of gift cards?
We're in the process of updating the P card policy and procedures, and that will be an important component of that, is terms of how they're used and how they're documented.
Okay.
With their use.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, can I get a motion, please? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. So now we're on to item 3.4, status of open audit recommendations as of June 30th, 2019.
Good afternoon again. Joe Roy, City Auditor. I'm here with Brittany Harvey from our office. The City Auditor's Office conducts audits and makes recommendations to strengthen accountability and improve efficiency and effectiveness of city programs. The office monitors progress toward implementing recommendations and reports on the status of all open audit recommendations every 6 months. This report shows the progress on 298 open audit recommendations, 52 of which were from audits issued during the first half of 2019. Over the past 6 months, 58 open audit recommendations were implemented or closed. Another 144 have been partly implemented by departments. Over the past 5 years, the City Auditor's Office has followed up on nearly 750 recommendations, and departments have implemented about 70% of those recommendations. We're pleased to report that departments implemented 58 recommendations in the last 6 months, and highlights include: the Finance Department has implemented online payment portals for city invoices, citations, and fire permits. This was a recommendation from our 2014 audit of the city's accounts receivables. The Police Activities League developed a concussion policy and began distributing education materials on concussion awareness to coaches and participants. This recommendation is from our 2018 audit of the Police Activities League. And the Fire Department implemented a semi-annual health risk assessment to evaluate fitness of fire staff, as well as provide recommendations to improve aerobic fitness, and this was from our 2012 audit of fire department injuries. These are just a few examples of the different recommendations implemented by departments in the past 6 months. 240 recommendations are still pending, and as noted earlier, 144 are partly implemented and 96 are not yet implemented. As shown here and in our online dashboard, we classify these recommendations by intended outcome: improved service delivery, operational efficiency, transparency and accountability, and securing city assets. We estimate the potential budget savings associated with open audit recommendations at $9.1 million. 7 pending recommendations are potentially subject to meet and confer. In June 2018, the City Council directed the City Manager to identify and prioritize work on 12 outstanding audit recommendations while continuing to make progress on addressing and working with the City Auditor to close out other open audit recommendations. I'll quickly run through the 12 priority recommendations. There are 3 in the area of potential budget savings, and these include reducing police department comp time balances. Although total overtime hours have declined, the number of sworn employees with large comp time balances continues to increase. Obtaining more favorable contract terms from golf course operators. The estimated general fund transfer for golf courses in the fiscal year 1920 operating budget totals $7.2 million, $5 million of which is to pay down debt associated with golf courses. And procuring a software solution and sufficient supervisory staff to support wage compliance comes from our audit of the Office of Quality Assurance in 2017. The office is currently beta testing a software solution and will evaluate resource needs after the system comes fully online. In the area of operational efficiency, we have non-emergency medical call response. Over the past 15 years, the fire department has made improvements that would allow it to potentially expand the use of priority response levels whenever authorization is granted by the medical director of the county's local emergency medical services agency. Contract management policies. The administration plans to engage a consultant to document consultant procurement and management practices across the city and develop recommendations for improvements. And volunteer program guidelines. The administration utilized an Encore Fellow to create draft volunteer policy, and a management guide. And a cross-departmental working group was established in March of 2018 and continues to review and add to the draft. In the area of improved service delivery, we have improving public education from our 2013 audit of fire prevention. The fire department's strategic business plan includes goals to expand community partnerships and promote public education, and will be reviewing options moving forward. The reactivation of the emergency management CERT program. This recommendation from our 2016 audit of the city's use and coordination of volunteers has been implemented. As of June 30th, 2019, there had been 5 20-hour CERT courses delivered with additional training scheduled during fiscal year 1920. Housing Department outreach to tenants and landlords. The Housing Department has made significant progress on this recommendation, providing additional outreach to tenants and landlords, explaining ordinance updates, updating its website, including adding an interactive map with addresses covered by the apartment rent ordinance, making communications available in multiple languages, and accepting petitions online. Updates to its lobby space to allow easier access to information for dropped-in customers is pending. And finally, in the area of citywide security risk mitigation, adopting an information security policy, this recommendation has been implemented. The IT department has updated credit card, password, and access protocols and drafted revisions to the city's information security policy, which was approved in April of 2019. Developing and implementing a disaster data recovery plan. This recommendation has also been implemented. IT has developed and tested a disaster recovery plan and continues to work with the Office of Emergency Management to identify and assess risk of key systems across the city. And finally, updating expired leases. The Office of Economic Development procured a new leasing system. However, staff is still working on implementation. More information about all open audit recommendations is available in the appendices of our report and online in our interactive dashboards. The dashboards can be found at www.sanjoseca.gov/auditor. With that, I'd like to thank all of the affected departments for their efforts to implement audit recommendations and for their assistance in compiling the report. We're happy to answer any questions and ask that you accept our report.
Thank you, Joe. And I have Councilmember Jimenez.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just have 2 questions. One, the first one is just purely out of curiosity, Joe. What is the oldest recommendation that we're still waiting for to be addressed or move forward? And I don't know what it is. I'm just sincerely just asking.
That's the priority recommendation about non-emergency medical call response.
Okay.
It was from an audit from 2001, audit of the fire department strategic plan, and it's about allowing the city to respond to medical calls through different protocols than they currently have. And really, the holdup is it's just working with the county to get approval for an alternative means to respond to certain responses.
Okay. So thank you for that. And I apologize if I missed it and I'm asking you something that was very apparent in the report, but because there was a lot of pages, I tried combing through it, much of it, but there's just a lot there. The general question I have is how do we, because, in going through some of these, some certainly in my mind are more important than others, and I see that sometimes you see some language as it relates to, target date, as an example, December 19th, and then it's been moved to December 2020 and things of that nature, right? Things get kicked down, and I understand there's circumstances that require that, but how do you, if you have any, is there any mechanism in place to prevent some of these recommendations from just floating out there into perpetuity and just without being addressed? Is there is there a point in which you say, okay, this obviously isn't being done, let me bring it forward? Does it then rise to one of the priority recommendations, right, and elevate it that way? I mean, how do we?
So there's a couple different mechanisms. So one of the things we try to do when we conduct audits, we work with departments to try to make recommendations that are implementable, of course. And then we work with departments over time, trying to, reemphasize the importance and, what it is that we're talking about, because sometimes there's turnover, whether it's in our office or in departments, and maybe a couple of years down the road, the people who were involved in the audit were no longer there, and so we just have to continue that discussion about what the problems were and what implementation looks like. So that's part of it. In terms of some of these that sit for a while and how they get on the priorities, so that's a discussion that we have with the city manager's office about what are the things that we think are risk areas and where they think are risk areas where things should be prioritized. And ultimately, a lot of the recommendations that sit for a while, it is just a matter of prioritization within departments about, there's a lot of work that city staff have, and this is just one piece of a larger work plan they have. And so figuring out, where's the low-hanging fruit, where we can knock some of these things out to make some improvements, and then where we need to spend a little bit more time to really think through how we're going to implement something. So whether it's a policy or procedure, or if it's a new software solution, or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Do you, internally within your office, is there any sort of time frame that you have in mind, whether it be in policy or in your head, with regards to when you become concerned on some of these recommendations?
We get concerned if there's just no movement. So sometimes there's an initial movement, and it becomes partially implemented, and then it may sit for a while, and then we might get concerned because then it's sitting there, and so there's just one last thing. Or if it's just something that just hasn't been made it on someone's to-do list, often that's what happens. It's because there's turnover or competing priorities, it just doesn't make it on someone's to-do list. And so we'll see something just get pushed back, and then we just try to engage with the department and figure out where we are and what we can do moving forward.
Okay.
And council member, if I can add.
Please.
So Joe and I have a monthly meeting to go over any concerns about the audits, and that's how we come up with with these priorities as things come off. And he will often, and same with Sharon in the past, if there's ones that look like they're just not moving, sometimes he will engage me on that, and we will figure out a solution to that and get it moving. And I've noticed also just in the way the auditor's office has been organized and how they've been working over the last few years, our departments and how they're making them much more implementable. A lot of them, as you're seeing them come through the committees, the recommendations are often somewhat completed during the audit process. So you're seeing more of that than we used to see in the past. And I've been around for a while, and it didn't used to be the case. So it's also on the city manager's expectations for each department head as when we do their annual review of making this a priority as well. So they need to address that in their management performance program.
Okay, thank you. So the very last question I have is related to the Appendix B, and it has, as you all know, with all the different reports and recommendations, it has a section where it gives comments, right, which I think is super helpful. There's a lot of these.
Yeah, it's the update, yeah.
Right, so I can't tell you I read through every single one. I sort of, chose the ones that were important to me. But what I'm curious about is, on the items that did have some delays or they pushed back the implementation period, totally understand that happens. I'm good with that. The question I have is, in some of the comments, it was clear in some, as opposed to others, for example, as to why the delay occurred. And so I wonder because I think it'd be beneficial to have very clear language in there, maybe a different delay section or something or other, as to why something was delayed. Sometimes in reading through some of these, in some occasions it was very clear, like, okay, that's why, maybe lack of staffing or whatever it may be. I understood very clearly, and I suspect anyone that reads this, that's why the delay occurred. But in other sections, it was still a little fuzzy as to why the delay occurred, and I think that would be helpful for me. I'm not sure if you've heard that or if you've thought about that, but it seemed to me in some of the language that it wasn't always clear.
Yeah.
So.
That's something we've thought about, and we try to include that best we can, but it sounds like we can do better in that area. So We'll take that.
All right, thank you for your consideration, I appreciate it. And as always, thank you for all the work, certainly to all the departments and you for bringing this forward. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Arenas.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I just want to, first of all, thank you for the very thorough and complete open audit, Joe. I've been tracking number 17-02, which is Office of Equality Assurance, increased workload warrants reevaluation of resource needs. And one of your recommendations, or when you were still in, not an auditor, but in the auditing office, one of the recommendations your office made was to update OEA staff with an online mechanism that can better collect and certify payrolls and other compliance documents. And so I know that there is currently there's an agreement to develop and test and implement a software solution, and I believe it's in beta testing at this point. So I just wanted to, this is an update that I got, I think, from Matt Kano or Chris Hickey's office, and correct me if I'm wrong with any of these things, but it seems to be going live for contractors in fall of 2019. So it'll be a new software platform where staff can they don't have to do this, carry all the payroll on that little dolly or whatever it was, the little cart. Everything's going to be electronic. And so for me, that means, one, our employees can actually focus on something else other than, just this very burdensome way of collecting information, but can actually do some visits at some of the sites and can be more thorough and more about payrolls and if need be, make sure that folks, if they're not abiding by what they need to be abiding, that they do so. So for me, this is a huge progress, and I just wanted to let you know that I know that you talked about with Councilmember Jimenez about some of the oldest recommendations that have been on file, but it's so satisfying that this one is kind of coming to a conclusion and as a result of one of your recommendations. So I just want to thank you for being so diligent about all of our internal processes and audits in order for our employees to have a better system and better work environment. And I look forward to fall 2019. We're all in the middle of it, so maybe at the end of the year we'll see this go live for our contractors and our employees. So that was really a comment more than anything. Nothing to question them about, but just to thank them for the work that you do. And just wanted to let you know that this is a result of one of them. So,
Councilmember Arenas,
Yes.
Jennifer McGuire.
Oh,
Just wanted to let you know that in the annual report that will be heard by the council on October 22nd, related to that audit, there was a pot of money that was set aside for that software, and there's a request in that report to use that money for temporary staffing related to getting this up and going. So you'll see a request to continue to move that forward.
wonderful. I know we won't close it out just yet, but I thought this was just a really important progress update that I had received, and I wanted to share it with you. So thank you. And thank you so much, Jennifer, for that.
Councilmember Perales.
Thank you. And I have a couple questions in regards to the, where are we at here? Audit of vehicle abatement. So I don't know if there's somebody from DOT here that wanted to try to help out and answer as well. But so on, this is number 18-4, and the first one is item number 3, which states, based on the conditions observed at the first visit, such as number of AVASA points, the Department of Transportation should prioritize cases that are likely abandoned and warrant quicker follow-up. And then it denotes that it's partially implemented, and I recall this from the conversation talking about that there's already a prioritization in hazardous and operative vehicles that can be removed within 48 hours. And I wanted to see what partially implemented actually looks like in reality. And I know that for myself, I'm still hearing from a number of community members all across my district actually that are stating there are some sort of blatantly obvious abandoned vehicles that I'll repeatedly hear complaints that they're sitting there for weeks, and that this is still an ongoing concern. So my hope is that the partially implemented means the reason they're seeing that is because this is not fully implemented, but that when we get there, they won't see this delay. So maybe if you can provide some comment on that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is you're referring to 1804?
Number 3.
Number 3. Okay, great. Let me get caught up with what that is. And were these the partially implemented from Avasa? That when we're applying Avasa terms on that, that's where vehicles that are clearly non-operable, and we're having to actually go through a different process for that. Is that the ones you're referring to, is those that are non-operable?
That's the section, yeah.
Okay. Partially implemented, I think, is what we're actually doing right now. Is Avasa has some new applications of new rules that we're going through at the current time right now. I'll have to get back to you on exactly what is left to do with in terms of how much we have yet to do in terms of what we're changing with that. But we're right now in the midst of changing our procedures for Avasa vehicle abatement. This one, I don't know exactly what the difference is in terms of how far we are in terms of implementing that or not fully implementation on that. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, yeah, it says the target date is June 2020, delayed from December of 2018. And then the prior one as well, target date July 2020, delayed from July of 2019. So I'm assuming since we have a target date of next year, there's obviously some amount of work that is not there, and clearly that's what I was hoping to get today, was what the partially implemented actually meant. So if you could get back to my office on that.
Specify what that is. I know it is different when we have non-operable vehicles like that. Usually they're removed faster than the other ones, but I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, or other vehicles that we're at in terms of how fast we're applying the tow to any of the vehicles that...
No, this one was in regards to the one that, as it denotes there, number 3,
with the hazard.
Prioritize cases that are likely abandoned and warrant quicker follow-up. So specifically, and I don't know if there's a...
The ones that are non-operable, like, yeah, let me get back to you on that one with regard to that then.
If I could just jump in for a
Please.
second, Allison Polly from the City Auditor's Office. So this recommendation is about prioritizing those vehicles that are likely to be abandoned but may not be inoperable. So one of the things we noted during the audit is that if a vehicle is under certain sections of the vehicle code, if it's non-operable, they're allowed to tow at the first visit. And we saw that that was happening, and I understand that's continuing to happen. Our concern was that a vehicle that might not fit those definitions, but that is likely to end up getting towed, we were hoping that could be prioritized. And one of the things we've seen is that, especially through the use of contract staff, the overall turnaround time has gotten relatively quick, but we haven't seen that sort of prioritization. So that's something we're still working with staff to understand as they're kind of improving their processes and using their contract staff, if that's something they're going to plan to do going forward. But that's kind of what we're still waiting to see. Is that
okay, yeah, no,
well?
that's helpful. And
Okay, yeah.
in regards to the, sort of even the vehicles that do meet the ability to be towed on the first time around, I'm hearing concerns on both ends from community members that it's not happening either end, right? It's still not happening with some blatantly obvious vehicles. And I'm not seeing these, all of them at least. Occasionally I get photos, but I'm not seeing them all with my own eyes, so I couldn't tell you what category they fall into. But I do know in general that the prioritization of these vehicles would help, whether they blatantly meet it and should be towed immediately or come close. That seems to be the rhetoric that my neighbors are sharing with me, right? That the vehicles fit into either one of those categories. And the more quicker we can address those. And that's sort of where I have implemented my focus as well with my community members, is that if there's anywhere I could try to encourage our vehicle abatement staff, right, to prioritize would be these obvious or near obvious vehicles that should be removed sooner than later. And if we could at least make a dent in that, right, other vehicles that we know are not necessarily just abandoned, but maybe have parked too long or whatever it may be, other issues going on, that is not necessarily our focus. We want to get those vehicles to move, not impound them. But I'm still not necessarily seeing that. And again, I'm hearing this from across my district, not necessarily just from my frequent flyers, as I know that D3 has. But the reality is it's where I'm hearing it from across the board. So that's why I was kind of interested in that. So I am hopeful that is completed by the June 2020 date, and we can see that prioritization actually helps. The other one was, and this one was the renaming. This is number 6, again 18-4, number 6. Renaming the category My San Jose app for abandoned vehicle. Can the auditor staff remind me why you provided that recommendation to rename it? And then it looks like as DOT went out, that it was determined that actual name was the best name. So what was that recommendation coming from?
Yeah, one of the concerns we had during the audit is that the name abandoned vehicle might give the wrong impression to residents, when a lot of the requests we were seeing were just for vehicles that were parked on the street for too long. So we thought potentially there might be some confusion there or an opportunity to change the name. Our understanding is that staff went out and kind of did a little bit of a study with some residents, did a sample, and decided that really was the name that fit the best. Vehicle abatement is kind of a technical term, and so we decided to close the recommendation because they had kind of done some work and decided this was the best way to go forward.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Councilmember Esparza.
Yeah, I actually wanted to echo the vehicle abatement issues as well. We were just, yeah. Gee, I wonder. We were actually having a side conversation. I was just mentioning that in my district we've had 3 abandoned boats within the past couple of weeks, which has been an interesting experience. I also wanted to add, if we could look at that a little bit more in depth on the different nuances. It's my understanding that some of the vehicles where there might be criminal behavior is taking priority. And in my district, they're clearly blown out. I have vehicles that are no tires, no wheels. I mean, they're no windows. Like, it's pretty obvious that it's an inoperable vehicle and that it's abandoned. So if you need more details, please feel free. But I also wanted to ask you to update my office as well, because this is an issue that I know our 2 districts, actually throughout the city, but especially District 3 and District 7 are facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jimenez.
Yeah, thank you. I still don't think anyone can top the abandoned hot tub that we had in my district, collecting rainwater for some time back. But we recently had a boat, and thank you so much, John, for addressing that. We appreciate it. One of the things we found to be one of the challenges as it relates to getting some of these vehicles or pieces of property that are left on the street is the refusal of some tow companies to tow. And I'm wondering if you can, if that makes sense. I see you the look you gave me.
Yeah, I didn't quite hear the question.
So some tow companies that are refusing to take some of the,
Right,
and whether that has anything to do with some of the delays.
Yeah, Councilmember John Rusto again. So that did occur in your district with that boat that we had a difficulty removing, is that we had some issues with the tow companies actually accepting that or taking that boat, and then they have to store it. So once we work through that, that's the kind of thing that is typical when we have odd types of vehicles, large ones or odd trailers attached to other vehicles. Some of the tow companies are reluctant to take those on. So we've got to work through that within our contract to be able to do so. Okay. It's just a matter of working with those tow companies to fulfill their responsibilities in the contract, but sometimes not as easy as it sounds.
Right. Would you say that some of the delays in getting vehicles towed are less attributable to that than other reasons? I mean,
Most of it is either large side vehicles or difficulty in towing, and then they've got to store them, and then they have issues with that. So it's most of those things that we have the issue with.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. And if there are no other questions, can I get a motion, please? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, now on to item 3.9, actions related to the California Senate Bill 998 and Title 15 of the San Jose Municipal Code for the San Jose Municipal Water System.
I believe there's a presentation with this, perhaps? No presentation?
No presentation?
3.9? Oh, we'll do it without it, no problem.
Okay. Well, no presentation. I don't see any.
I'll do a quick
speakers.
overview if that's all right.
That's fine. Let's do it.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Provenzano, Deputy Director with Environmental Services Department. Next to me is Rick Bruno, Deputy Director with the Finance Department. This item before you is on Senate Bill 998. It's on new water requirements for water utilities of a certain size. Water utilities have a number of customers, 200 customers or higher. It is a statewide law. It's a little bit different than how we've been doing things in the past. There are four major changes. One is that we need to have a written and posted policy, a disconnection policy. The second is that policy has to be translated into several different languages. The state defines an in-depth exemption process for low-income households, and that also needs to be included in our new disconnection policy. And we need to report the number of disconnects that we do annually on our website. The overall goal of this Senate Bill 998 really was to increase transparency, help foster customer awareness on the disconnection process, and improve customer service support. Next steps, the recommendation before Council is to accept the modifications to Muni Water's rules and regs, to accept the minor modifications to the municipal code. Staff will in turn will create that single cohesive disconnection policy, have it translated into multiple languages, and have it posted online. In addition, staff have been and are working on updating the customer information and billing system to help implement this. And with that, we can answer any questions.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Just a quick question. In my part of the city, we have Great Oaks Water, and so I'm trying to think of how this would apply to, obviously we're talking about San Jose Muni, but how does it apply to Great Oaks Water and what they need to be doing?
Great Oaks and San Jose Water Company are the same. They're of the size where they would need to follow the same state law. Their implementation, though, will go through the California Public Utilities Commission.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. All right, on to item 310, acceptance of retirement plans comprehensive annual investment fee reports for calendar year 2018.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, Council members. Roberto Peña, Chief Executive Officer for the Office of Retirement Services. With me here this afternoon are Prabhu Palani, about our Chief Investment Officer, and next to him is Vincent Seri. He is our Police and Fire Board Chair, has been for the last 2 years. And we are here this afternoon to present to you the Retirement Plan's Comprehensive Investment Fee Report for the calendar year 2018. I know Prabhu has a very short presentation prepared for you, and I would encourage you as you go through the presentation, if you have any questions or comments, I want to make it as interactive as possible, because I think the more questions that you ask, I think the better and more ready we are to provide you with information that you need. So with that said, Prabhu.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Roberto. Good afternoon, Vice Mayor Jones and City Council members. Last year at the same time, we were here to present 2017 expenses. And this year, we'll actually be talking about 2018 expenses. And I also want to mention that the Investment Committee Chair of the Federated Board was going to be here, but unfortunately could not make it at the last minute. So firstly, I'll cover some definitions about what we're going to talk about in terms of expenses. And then I'll do a comparison with last year's 2017 calendar year expenses, some projections, why do we manage the plans the way we do, and then finally we'll open it up for questions. So if we go to slide 2, basically talks about our, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to change this, okay. About investment policy statement on investment fees. Clearly states here that the board shall give consideration to the impact of administrative expenses, external management fees, and performance fees when establishing the asset mix policy of the plan. And so our focus is really on an after fee basis. We try to maximize plan returns on a risk control basis, of course. And so we are very cognizant of fees. We take fees very seriously. So do our boards. And we'll talk more about it as we go along. Now, we often talk about fees in very simplistic terms. And what we actually provide is a total expense ratio in this report. And you will see that very, very few public plans actually present total expenses. We have hardly 3 or 4 of our peers who actually come out and give this level of transparency in terms of expenses. But we'll also show you later the CAFR numbers, which are more of an apples-to-apples comparison compared to some of our peers. So total expense ratio, what does this mean? This is really, it comprises of 4 different things. The first is management fees. This is the fees paid to investment management firms. This is the base fee paid to investment management firms. And occasionally, we also pay incentive fees for certain types of managers, such as hedge funds or private equity managers, where if they actually beat a certain bogey or benchmark, they actually participate in the upside. A third category of fees is operating fees. And these are fees that are often embedded inside funds and that are not very transparent. And these are administrative expenses embedded within a fund, like audit, tax, legal, and custodian fees. And finally, other costs incurred at the plan level, such as staff salaries, consultants, and third-party vendors. So on to slide 5, which actually shows calendar 2018 fees. And as you can see, the first column shows management fees. This is across 4 plans, the 2 pension plans as well as the 2 healthcare plans. And that was $42.8 million. Incentive fees were $19.6 million. And then we have, of course, operating expenses and other expenses for a total of $71.2 million. And that is against an asset base of $6.2 billion, which gives us a total expense ratio of 1.14%. And calendar year 2017, those total expenses were $75.7 million against an asset base of $5.86 billion. So our fees have come down, as you can see, and our asset base has improved. So our fee ratio has come down a little bit. Now, this on slide 6, you can see on the left side how our total expense ratio has changed over time.
and more recently from 2017 to 18, you can see a downward shift. It went from 1.29% to 1.14%, a saving of about 15 basis points. And we'll show some projections about what to expect the next year. But more interesting is the chart on the right. As I mentioned before, the fee report that we provide is a comprehensive fee report, which very few peers of ours have. But an easier to obtain peer comparison is based on our CAFR report, which you can see on the right side. And the red bubble there is the Office of Retirement Services here in San Jose. And as you can see on an apples-to-apples basis here compared to some of our peers, we're somewhere roughly in the middle. Now, this is an interesting chart. Slide 7 shows the calendar year fee report breakdown. And this does not include other expenses, but just the fee paid to managers. So how much do we really pay to our managers? Right? As you can see, between the two plans, there's about 72 basis points that we pay in base fees and 33 basis points in incentive fees. And that's broken down between Fed and police and fire. So that's the interesting number. And I'll come back to this. We often get questions, why are you paying 72 basis points in fees when my investment advisor only charges 10 basis points, index fees are available for 5 basis points, and so on. So I'll actually break down the 72 basis points and explain how we actually come up with that. But before we do that, another question we get often is, how much of your plan is actively managed versus, passive allocations? As you can see, as of the end of 2018, between both plans, it's roughly 50-50. About half our assets are actively managed and half our assets are passively managed. Now, how did we get those fee savings in 2018 compared to 2017? As you can see on slide 9, our average passive allocation has been increasing. So the end point there for 2018 does not add up to 50% that you saw in the previous slide, because the 50% was as of the end of the year, and this shows the average throughout the year. So we've been sort of slowly ticking up our passive assets. Now, I'd mentioned earlier that we pay about 72 basis points in management fees and 33 basis points in incentive fees. So how do those 72 basis points break down? So 50% of our plan is passively managed, and 50% is actively managed. For the half that's passively managed, we actually pay about 2 basis points in fees. And for the half that's actively managed, we pay about 70 basis points in fees. And how do those 70 basis points break down further? And as you can see on the chart on the right, we have different types of managers. And on the left side, there's 3 triangles. There's a stair chart, as you can see. The 16 basis points that we actually pay are traditional active managers. And these are long-only managers who attempt to beat a benchmark. And then the middle box, you can see the rectangle is 26 basis points, and those are fees that we pay our hedge fund managers. And those are the base fees that we pay our hedge fund managers. And on the right side, the rightmost rectangle is 27 basis points, and those are the fees that we pay to our private equity managers, for a total of about 70 basis points. Now, I'm going to talk about projected management fees, but I'll go back to this chart, actually 10. So when we talk about controlling fees, what can we really control, right? We can do 2 things. We can continue to increase our passive exposure, which is possible, and that will help us bring down our fees a little bit, which we have been doing. But more interestingly, if you see the middle box here, there's a 26 basis point of fees go to hedge funds. And again, this is something that we can control. And our hedge fund allocation actually over the last few years has been going down. At one point several years ago, this is at least for the federated plan, our hedge fund allocation was as high as 25%. And right now, it's closer to between 7 and 9% between the 2 plans. So we have made a concerted effort to reduce our hedge fund allocation. And
There was a good reason why we had hedge funds previously, and that was because in anticipation of a market slowdown, hedge funds usually offer a lot of protection. But one of the things that we were able to do in conjunction with our boards is we actually increased our short-term bond allocation, which actually provides us a lot of buffer in the event of a market downturn. And that has helped us cut our hedge fund allocation. So those are some of the areas where we can actually save fees. So this is a rough estimate. I'd like to underpromise and overdeliver, but very conservatively, if you look at our plans, we expect our fees, the 72 basis points that we spoke about in management fees, we expect that to go down to 67 basis points for the next calendar year. It's calendar year 2019. Again, this is a result of cutting back on our hedge fund allocation. That concludes the formal presentation, though I will actually talk about a couple of different things before I open it up for questions, because these are questions that we often get. A question that we get often is, why don't we simply have a global 60-40 or a 70-30? Why do we need a sophisticated plan? And so we can do that. We could certainly manage a global 60-40 or a 70-30. But what that does, the reason for having a sophisticated plan is, one is that our pension plans are underfunded. And therefore, in the event of a downturn, it impacts our sponsor a lot. And our sponsor, the City of San Jose, is very sensitive to the volatility of the plans. So what will happen if I do a plain 70-30 is, if you take the fourth quarter of 2018, for example, the market was down about 15%. And so in the event of a 70-30 allocation, and if we had 70% in stocks, our plan could have been down as much as 10%. So in one quarter, between the two plans, we could have lost $600 million. And that actually puts San Jose, the City of San Jose, as sponsor, in a very difficult bind. And therefore, we have chosen to manage our plans with much lower volatility, given the funding status of the plan and the sensitivity of our sponsor to our returns. And therefore, we now have hedge funds, we have private assets, all of which act as a buffer. And in that particular quarter, for example, instead of being down 10%, we were down about 4%. Many of our peers were actually down significantly more. And so asset allocation is a very important consideration. Asset allocation drives fees. We actually deliberately manage a complex portfolio in order to help our sponsor navigate, very turbulent times in the market. And this is something that we had actually spoken at length at the joint meeting, the board's city council meeting on April 30th. And we will, of course, address this again in a future, in an upcoming meeting in November, which will be the pension working group. With that, actually, I will now turn this over to the council for questions, unless Chair Sanzeri has anything further to add.
I'm happy to help entertain any questions as well.
Okay, well, thank you for that report. I don't see any questions from my council colleagues. I do want to say, though, that I'm actually one of the people that has been asking a ton of questions about why don't we do an index, reduce fees. And at least from my perspective, the reason why the whole issue of fees keep coming up is there was an analogy used that it's equivalent to a toenail on an elephant. But when we look at the actual amount, $70 million, $100 million, I just think about all the police officers and fire personnel and other city services that we can deliver with that kind of money based on the rate of return that we're getting. I think if we were getting a much better return, I don't think the fee issue would be as much of a concern. Also, you made some very valid points in terms of the way the portfolio is structured, that during down markets, that our risk is reduced. And you gave a great example of that, but you didn't give us an example of the alternative, that when we had that market downturn, the market did go back up. And what kind of returns were we missing out on the up market versus the down market? So
can I answer that?
Yes.
Yes. So our plan is not designed to participate fully in an up market. And that's, again, by choice, right? I mean, if we are fully funded, if you gave me a plan that's 95% funded or 100% funded, and if the city was not so dependent on pension returns, or if the city were not so impacted by pension returns, we can actually take that level of risk. And so what would have happened, and the average, if you look at the average pension plan out there that's more fully funded, you would have seen that in the fourth quarter of 2018, many of them lost a lot more than we did. So we lost about 4%, and I think the median was down about 6 to 7%. But in the first quarter of 2019, there was a bounce back, and we participated in some of it, but again, not as much as our peers. So our goal has really been to play defense, and that again takes into account, the funded, how much underfunding we have in our plans, as well as the impact that we have on our sponsor.
So structurally, and I totally understand that strategy, but structurally, we have a rate of return that we need to hit. And what you're telling me is that our strategy is designed effectively to never hit that rate of return. So aren't we structurally, from an investment strategy standpoint, set up for failure?
No, that's not true. So we do have a rate of return. I was just comparing the upside capture compared to our peers. So we do have an expected rate of return, and for both plans, that discount rate right now is 6 3/4. And so when we come up with our asset allocation, what the boards really think about is, do we have a greater than 50% chance of beating that assumed rate of return, which is 6.75%, and which is how we calculate our funding ratio and so on. And so in the last 10 years, about half the time, we've actually exceeded that assumed rate of return. So we give ourselves a chance in the long run of doing better than half the time of beating that expected rate of return. In some cases, it can be 300 to 400 basis points better than the assumed rate of return. In some cases, we've underperformed by 100 or 200 basis points, which is really a function of the market. So what I was trying to say was, we are playing defense here, but at the same time, we do take into account our assumed rate of return, which is 6.75%. But in comparison to our peers, many of whom are better funded, we may not capture the upside of a market as much.
Great.
And can I add to that as well?
Yes.
What we're talking about here is really the investment portfolio. We're not talking about the actuarial side of the plan, which really is critical. San Jose is unique in the sense that we have a large number of retirees that we're paying out. We actually have about 40% of plan assets that will be paid out over the next 10 years. So it has a dramatic impact on how we look at allocating assets. So in many cases, we can't afford to take on the kind of risk that a younger plan might be able to take on.
Great. Well, thank you. And it doesn't look like there's any other questions. So can I get a motion to accept the report?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Let's vote. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next is item 4.1, City Council Policy Priority 3, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and City Council. I'm Matt Cano, Director of Public Works. With me is Division Manager Chris Hickey and Division Manager David French. I just want a few opening remarks. I'd really like to thank David and Chris for taking on this project and this program. That's really allowing us not just to look at how we build projects for our community, but also build projects with our community to provide opportunity for our community to strengthen themselves and strengthen their places in life and their economic status by participating and engaging on our projects. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Chris.
Good afternoon, Chris Hickey, Public Works. Just jumping right into the presentation here. So the recommendations are in front of you. So approval of the work plan for the phased implementation of the Public Works contracting program report which is a report on the council priority number 3, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. It's currently being identified as the Public Works Contracting Program. Secondly, approval to remove this council priority number 3, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, from the council priority list at the next priority setting session. So, as Matt stated, the Public Works Contracting Program, we are focused on building our city together with our community. The Public Works Contracting Program is, as previously stated as well, currently council priority number 3. Public Works has reported back to the Community and Economic Development Committee multiple times in 2017, 2019, and most currently September 23rd of this year. The Public Works Contracting Program focuses on outreach, engagement, and education. There have been multiple policy changes to allow for greater access and more opportunities with fewer barriers, and flexible. It's a flexible program that allows change to procedures as well as education as they come up. So how do we do this? So if you look at the Public Works Contracting Program, in order to develop a program to help our contractors as well as help Public Works, we need to review and identify the needs, the barriers, and the opportunities. So with this in mind, Public Works developed a program that can be broken into 2 distinct parts. So one would be the education and outreach. So we have the Public Works Academy, which is broken down again into multiple parts. Contractor outreach enhancement, e-procurement, changes to the e-procurement platform, so currently Bedingo, as well as the local chamber and business development relationships. So just to break down those a few more in depth. So recently we've gone through a change with our e-procurement, what used to be BidSync to a new platform named Bedingo. We actually changed and made it a lot easier to use for contractors. So for example, contractors on the old procurement website would need to pick from a list of about 8,000 different codes that would determine the scope of work that they could perform. With the new platform, Bedingo, that list has actually dropped down significantly to approximately 200 codes. So contractors are, it's much easier for contractors to determine what type of work they're actually going to be receiving from the city. Additionally, it was brought up in a previous presentation, but this Office of Equality Assurance is actually developing an online software tool for contractors to submit their certified payrolls, their request, or a requirement on state law to submit those documentation. So the certified payroll supporting e-solution will actually make it easier for contractors to submit documentation to the city. There will be fillable PDF files. The system will also allow for contractors that are required to submit to the state to submit it in the same format so that contractors do not have to do double the work. So moving on to the next bullet point down, procurement modifications. With the changes, or with the passing of Measure S, the procurement modernization in November of 2018, it allowed Public Works and the CAO and city staff to update the municipal code. One of the major increases to or major changes was the increase of minor public works construction threshold from 100,000 to 600,000. Additionally, Public Works was able to add in a local and small preference wording into the municipal code to allow us to add those preferences to our minor public works construction projects. Also, there is a government experience work waiver, as well as we have bonding and insurance requirement modifications that we've done. What's not on this slide, and should have been, and I apologize, is there's actually, Public Works has embarked on a new procurement method with a goal of increasing the use of local and small contractors. It's actually a pool of pre-qualified contractors who will compete for smaller sized public works construction, typically known as minor public works. Public Works has put out 6 minor pre-qualification pools for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, parks projects, building projects, and minor street projects. So this change actually increases competition for the contractors, gives more opportunities, a variety of contracts, and while it limits it maintains competitive bids for the city, it actually limits competition for the actual contractors in the pool. They will only be competing against other pre-qualified contractors within that pool. So that is a new process. Additional statistics and information about the pre-qualification pools will be made available through the CED committee in the annual Contracting with Local and Small Business report. And with that, I would like to kick it off to David French.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, David French, Public Works. So I'm going to talk go a little bit more in depth on the Public Works Academy and what that consists of. So the Public Works Academy is made up, as Chris mentioned, 3 different parts. Our first part is the opportunity awareness events that we have conducted and are conducting in the future. So we've conducted 6 opportunity events this calendar year. And what those opportunity events are geared for is really our first engagement with the local contracting community. During those events, we go over the current opportunities that are available for bid, as well as how to find these opportunities utilizing the e-procurement platform Bidingo. We also go through the experience requirements to bid on projects at a high level. And then we also talk about our construction contracting seminars, which is the next part of the Public Works Academy. So the construction contracting seminars are really made to go in depth on managing a public works contract. The current seminars is set up as a 6-part series. That increased from 4 from the first series we ran based off of the feedback we received from the participants. And what those series are made up of, so the first seminar is on procurement and the bid and how to participate in bids. The second one is a deep dive on the construction contract. The third, fourth, and fifth is the pre-construction activities, construction activities, post-construction activities, and the final one is on prevailing wage. So at the conclusion of the 6 seminars, they really have a solid understanding and a lot of information on how to manage a public works contract. And the last is our focus workshops. So based off of the feedback we received during those seminars, we'll have a focus topic and run a 2-hour workshop specifically on that topic to follow up and give more in-depth information on that particular topic. So with that, I will pass it back to Chris Hickey.
And Public Works, actually, I'll go back one. Public Works cannot do this alone. We've actually had multiple help with other departments in the city, but here are our local chamber and business association relationships. So Public Works continues to strengthen our relationships with Work to Future and businessownerspace.org, but a huge help in the success of the Public Works contracting program actually has come with the development of partnerships with the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and Black Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Small Business Development Center and SCORE. They were an instrumental part of the success of this program, and the continued relationship will be beneficial for both the city and Public Works, but also they provide a great service and support structure for local and small contractors. And with that, back to the recommendations. Again, approval of this will approve the work plan of a phased implementation of the Public Works contracting program, and approval will remove this as council priority number 3, disadvantaged business enterprises, from the council priority list at the next priority session. Additionally, staff has reviewed Vice Mayor Jones's blue memo that was submitted. Staff supports and believes we can accomplish that recommendation. And with that, staff is here for any questions that the council may have. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Matt and Chris and David for the hard work, working with our task force, developing these programs. I think they're really exciting what we're accomplishing, and I'm looking forward to working with you closely in the future to roll out and implement other programs. We have a speaker on this item, Nancy Avila.
Vice Mayor, Council Member. My name is Nancy Avila, and I am a member of Small Business Advisory Task Force, President of Vietnamese American Chamber of Commerce, and a Public Works Academy graduate. I'm here today. First, I would like to thank you, the Public Works Department and the staff for their hard work, putting on a very informative Public Works Academy. Second, I'm here to ask for your support for the Public Works Academy, an educational program that educates small businesses in construction industry, the processes and the know-how to do business with the city of San Jose. The critical information such as prevailing wages, how to put a bid together, where to get help, which reliable resources that they can bank on when it comes to planning and coding compliance. According to the citydata.com, small business contributes 6.0% to the city of San Jose, 6.2% nationwide. Clearly, small construction business deserve an additional opportunity to expand and grow their business. A member of the academy said on the graduation day, "I don't speak much English, but I have 2 hands and a passion to build. I hope the city will give me a chance to grow and working with the city on behalf On behalf of the SBTF, which is the Small Business Advisory Task Force, I also like to thank you, Public Works Department and the staff, for implementing some of the recommendations that we have submitted to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Bringing it back to council, Councilmember Camus.
I also want to thank staff. It's not every day we get to check off a priority, and I really want to thank you for your work on this. And I thought it was really elegant solutions that you've described to help get contractors in the mix, especially small contractors and people who are not familiar with the process. I hope that we continue to expand the program. On the building and planning side, though, we'd love to see this same type of thought process move into the building and planning department, where, these are already we could put on a website that these subcontractors have already gone through some kind of training for the building and planning department and know how to get through the process easier, so that people looking for contractors out there can say, hey, at least this guy knows how to get through the system. Anyway, thank you for your work. I'll make a motion to approve the memo from Vice Mayor Chappie Jones.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I see no other comments, so, well, I take that back. Councilmember Arenas.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I have a couple of questions. When I read the memo, I saw that there was a Public Works contracting program alternative on page 6. And And I saw that you weren't going to recommend, and I think this has already been to CED, a minority-owned business or a women-owned business enterprise or other business enterprises. And you were going to wait to see what the results were from this structure, which is focusing on those two things that you've mentioned earlier, which are the education and outreach, and then second, the procurement modifications for the waiver of the government work, the waiting for the bonding, and the local small preference, right? So are those, how do we figure out, because it says here we can go back and figure out whether this is working or not working. How will we know whether it is working or not working? I mean, that could be so subjective. So I'm looking for real specific in terms of intended results for this. And the reason I'm asking for this is that if we don't track what, I don't know what we have in terms of currently tracking contracts and what kind of companies are we, or who are we providing who are these new small companies that are receiving these contracts? How many have they been receiving them, or how many times? If we don't know any of those numbers, how will we know what those intended results are, and what are our intended results?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember, for the question. That's a great point. I mean, right now, as I've said before, I think it may be committee, is these, we really love these programs, and we know they're going to be, we feel strongly they're going to be successful, the ones we're recommending, but the proof is going to be in the numbers. It's going to be a year from now, when I'm sitting here, I need to show that with numbers and with data, not just anecdotes, but with numbers and data, that they are working. And if they're not working, I'm going to need to come with recommendations to be able to fix them or enhance them, and to maybe go stronger, such as an official MBE or DBE program. And so we have systems set up, and there's actually training being provided, I think, next week by David to all the project managers in the city about how to use our minor pre-qualified pools. We'll be tracking how many people from the academy cross-reference over to being pre-qualified contractors, and then how many of them get actual city work, and then how much work they get. And so we're going to be tracking all those statistics to make sure that there's a clear indication that, yes, there's not only people attending our academy, but how many of those people actually get work with the city, and then how much work, and how many of those are local and small businesses. And we feel that although there's always various factors influencing that, if that data isn't showing progress, then we're going to need to recommend enhancing this program. And so every year to CED committee, we have a small and local business report that we do in concert with the finance department. And then the next one is coming up in a few months, so we won't have data on that, but our commitment is at that annual CED committee report that we hold ourselves accountable to that data, and if that data is not showing progress, that we recommend any enhancements to the program.
All right, so right now the target would be that whoever voluntarily participates in the academies, if they move on, first of all, if they complete the academy, and then two, if they receive any work as a result of that academy and apply, or may not apply and may not receive it, but at the very least they applied. One of the concerns I have is that last week we heard about anti-displacement for small businesses, and we heard some statistics about businesses, and I think it was, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was about 51% were minority-owned businesses. And I'm going to venture to say that in this arena, that it's probably the same, if not more. And so for me, a sign of success would be, one, that we have ethnically owned businesses participating, two, that they're also women-owned businesses. And so some of those groups that we typically say are disadvantaged, I think that we need to target those folks and measure our success of, on those groups, based whether those groups are being given an opportunity to participate or not. For me, it's not enough for a group, a company to participate in the academy, complete it, and then move on, because I don't know who that company is. I know it's going to be local, and I know it's going to be small. And that's all in terms of criteria.
Okay, yeah, definitely understand in concept, and I completely agree in concept. What we'll have to go back and look at is how we can statistically, with numbers, show progress in that, and then still be legally appropriate as far as the data we're collecting and reporting on. But in concept, I am completely 100% in agreement with what you're saying. So we'll have to figure out how to report back on that and show progress.
Right, thank you. Because there's different ways to maybe certify or recognize folks who are in those groups that we just talked about, or this disadvantaged groups, women, maybe ethnic, I think it was LGBTQ. I forget what the other groups are, but it's not because they're any less. It's just not on the top of my head. But for me, that would be a measure of success. So if I don't know if it's self-reporting on their part or some kind of certification. I think it was, I think my team had talked to me about the State of California Utility Supplier Diversity Program, and I think if there's another system in which they're already certified as a minority-owned business or any of those categories, that we could honor maybe some of that certification and recognize, or we could probably honor their own reporting. And I don't know what we would ask, but I see that there's this piece that's missing for me in terms of ethnically, one, ethnic, two, females, and the rest of the other categories. And like I said, it's not because I feel any less. I just think that would be also a measure of success for us.
So Councilmember Arenas, I think we have to look at the situation based on, unfortunately, on the Prop 209 situation that we have in California. And unfortunately, Prop 209 says that no government agency can give a preference in contracting to anyone based on race, nationality, sex.
I'm not saying giving a preference.
No, and with regard to statistics,
right?
It's possible to do statistics, but you can't force somebody to self-identify. So it has to be on a voluntary basis.
Absolutely, that's all I said is if it was something that they would offer up. Some folks may not want to identify in any of those ways, but I think when we talk about when we heard at last week's study session, we heard who our small businesses are. I think it's impossible for us to ignore who those folks are, and not provide some measure of maybe evening the playing field for them. So that's my point. And the other point is that how do we know the measure of success? For me, that would be a measure of success. I know that you said the number of participants who completed, and then the number of participants who've achieved a contract. But I'm hoping that I can have a friendly amendment in terms of adding some of this criteria for tracking and progress, because for me it seems very vague. And those two criteria are, for me, it's not enough, especially hearing who our businesses are in San Jose, that we would add the tracking and progress and the self-reporting, however it is that I'm not dictating how it should be collected or how people should identify, but that we collect some of that information and that we make it part of this program, since we're not going down the route of a minority business enterprise or a women's business enterprise or any of those other ones, but that we take those indicators into account to see how well we're doing.
I would just said, yeah, I don't know exactly which indicators would be the best to track yet right now, but I agree that when we come back at our annual reporting with statistics, coming up with something that can help us understand how we're doing in those areas is very important. That's a big part of why we're doing what we're doing. So I want to be able to measure ourselves against that to the extent, as far as much as we can.
So who has a motion on the floor? Is it Johnny? Johnny, would you be open to a friendly amendment to add a method of tracking the progress of inclusion based on some of the categories that I just mentioned? And I'll just leave that open so that you can all decide what those categories are, but inclusive of the ones that I just mentioned.
Well, I don't mind collecting the data if it's voluntarily given. I want to leave it to staff though, but because I'm actually very proud of the work that they have been going out to reach out into the Vietnamese business community and to the African American business leaders. So they have been going out and meeting with ethnic groups. So I don't mind implementing it. I just want to be careful not to put too much burden on them is all.
Correct.
So I'm okay with a
tracking method.
Yeah.
Okay. And that and this friendly amendment is not a reflection of the work that you're doing at all. I know that it has been a lot of work to get these academies going, so I don't want it to appear that way. I just want to make sure that with the information that we continue to learn about our city, and we already knew it, we already knew that our small businesses, most of them are, the majority of them are ethnically owned small businesses, that we continue to take those things into consideration as we move forward with any new programs that we have, especially in this area. And
I just want to make sure that if that's okay with the seconder.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Wonderful. And just one other thing that I have in mind, and it's how do we break down some of the larger contracts that we have? And I've been thinking, and I know that I mentioned this to John Risto in DOT, because we have pavement money for the next 9 years. And right now I think we have 10 to 12 contracts. And I believe that we can break those contracts down a little bit more. For example, there was an ADA contract, and I think it was, I don't know, it was 1,200 ADA ramps, and it was one company. We could have certainly broken that down to a couple, and maybe have some of those smaller businesses that specialize in a portion of that, because I know that there's phases that you complete in order for those ramps to get done. And my residents were actually very, because we had a lot of those ADA ramps improvements, which we're all grateful for, but at the same time they had to endure some of those the cones, to not step in that area, because the company would first come in and break it up and then do their second trip in terms of, I don't know, setting. I have no idea what that is, but I just know that I know John told me that there's a couple of steps that they take. And so if there was a specialized company that could have helped in any of those steps, or if it could have been broken down a little bit further, and some of our smaller businesses can compete in that. I just say that we look at all of our opportunities, and I know that you have our small businesses in mind, and a supporter here for us to continue to break down some of the contracts that we have in order to have our small businesses benefit. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Let's vote. All right. Now we're on to item 4.3, actions related to mobile vendors.
Vice Mayor Jones, might this be an opportunity to present the commendation?
Yes. Perfect opportunity. Thank you. We will. Kim, we're going to take a little intermission to present a commendation. So, Councilmember Foley, please join me at the podium, and we'll present a commendation to Britannica Arms Almaden. Britannia Arms Almaden.
John, would you like to join me? Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to bring forward Councilmember Johnny Camus as we share the Britannia Arms in spirit, if not physically. Britannia Arms Almaden, also known as the Brit, has proudly served the residents of San Jose since its founding in 1988 and has become a San Jose institution. The staff at the Brit, from the management to wait staff, has helped San Jose's residents experience joyful days and nights at their location. And they have some of the best fish and chips and fried pickles you'll ever have. The Brit has hosted multiple fundraisers for our community, raising over $400,000 with the help of their customers for various causes important to the residents of San Jose, including a recent fundraiser for the victims of the Gilroy shooting. Over its 31 years of operation, the Brit has become a model business for San Jose through its devotion and service to the community. I'm excited to recognize the Brit for all its work and dedication to supporting those in need. John, before I ask the Vice Mayor to present the commendation, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you. My name is John Mackay, and this is my business partner, Michael. Michael, if you could come forward, please. We would like to thank you for the commendation. We couldn't have been able to do this without the help of our customers, our suppliers, and our staff, and also our family. Thank you for taking the time out your busy schedule to recognize us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. That's okay.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to item 4.3, actions related to mobile vendors.
So Vice Mayor and City Council, you all are in receipt of the joint memo between the City Attorney's Office and the City Manager. This particular ordinance is here before you to implement Senate Bill 946, which was adopted in 2018, that was adopted to provide additional opportunities for mobile vendors. Under SB 946, municipalities would have to allow mobile vending in certain situations, and also municipalities were restricted in the way that they can regulate mobile vendors. Our attachment A to the memo briefly summarizes the prohibitions with regard to municipal regulations. SB 946 also allows the municipalities to adopt requirements regulating time, place, and manner if those regulations were directly related to health and safety or welfare concerns, and also allows municipalities to require permits in certain situations. The attachment A, as I said, it gives you a brief summary of those limitations on regulations, and then also provides you with a summary of the additional regulations that the city is recommending be adopted in order to regulate time, place, and manner for those items that are related to health and safety. And so we have city staff here to answer questions. If there's any questions on it, we'd be happy to answer them. And this is the first reading of the ordinance. It'll come back to you in 2 weeks for a final reading. So to the extent that it needs to be modified, we can do that tonight.
Thank you. Before we go to council, we have a couple of speakers on this item. Casey Hill. Casey. Diana Gruber. Jason Minsky. And Yasmin Hernandez. And Scott Neese.
Ready?
Yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you briefly in support of the memo issued by Mayor Liccardo and council members Carrasco and Esparza. My name is Casey Hill. I'm the executive director of Veggielution, a nonprofit community farm that stewards 6 acres of public park at Emma Prush Farm Park. In fall 2018, Veggielution launched a mobile food program to find innovative ways to elevate the culinary creativity and ambition of low-income East San Jose food entrepreneurs and explore pathways for increasing economic mobility. What has become clear to us in this very interesting sandbox of trial and error is that there are already significant cost and infrastructure obstacles for mobile food entrepreneurs who want to run a fully permitted business in Santa Clara County. Adding a city restriction that puts these entrepreneurs in the position of trying to grow and bring visibility to their business 500 feet from where the action is only adds insult to injury. It is redundant as a necessary safety provision within the ordinance already requires that vendors, quote, maintain 3-foot clear access of path and travel. Having read and analyzed the LA ordinance, which came out in early 2019, it appears that this particular restriction has been included as a one-size-fits-all approach without consideration for the unique economic and community ecosystem of San Jose. Last week, Veggielution received an email from a well-established organization in San Jose asking if any of our East Side grown entrepreneurs might be interested in working with them to reimagine their on-site food service. They had interacted with the entrepreneurs at downtown events. This is an example of an invitation that arises when we meet entrepreneurs where they are, front and center with dignity and visibility. I urge the council to reject the 500-foot restriction and instead take additional time to intentionally and thoughtfully craft a more defined provision that ensures access, opportunity, and safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, Council. Diana Gruber, Team San Jose. So we manage the nonprofit organization for the Convention Center and the cultural facilities, such as the San Jose Civic, as well as the Center for Performing Arts and California Theater. I'm here in support of the amendment to add to the 500-foot restriction for the peddlers. Unfortunately, we have situations on many occasions, including such events as Comic-Con, Fan May, large groups that come into the convention center who we have problems with the vendors blocking egress, coming into the building with the carts, not abiding by security, not abiding by any restrictions of the 3-foot that they need to maintain, and actually being more aggressive towards us. It seems that it's not necessarily the local vendors that are in that situation, but we're having people that are coming up from Los Angeles, from other areas that are coming up specifically for these large events to create chaos in front of the buildings. If they were not blocking the streets, creating the grease traps that happen out there, the unsafe conditions, the restrictions of access and egress from our events, then it'd be something that we could work with. But we have consistently had to deal with these problems, not only at the convention center, but also at the San Jose Civic during concerts and egress. We politely ask that they move aside, to no avail. One leaves, the other one comes right in, and it just doesn't stop. So while we're all for economic growth and for the folks that want to have entrepreneurship, we're all for that. But if it has to be in somewhat of a reasonable manner, that we're not blocking egress, that we're not creating a safety hazard for the pedestrians and the people that are attending the functions. So I ask that you guys please consider the amendment the way it is.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council and City staff. My name is Yasmin Hernandez Carvajal. I am the Community Engagement Manager at Veggielution, and I lead our Eastside Grown Mobile Food Advocacy and Entrepreneurship Program. I'm here in support of the memo addressed by Mayor Liccardo and Council members Carrasco and Esparza, presented today related to the 500 feet restriction around event venues in San Jose. Local food business are a key part of San Jose's economy. Mobile food vending, especially food carts, are an important method of income generation for low-income residents of San Jose. Food carts and food trucks are becoming increasingly popular in San Jose as a quick and expensive option in social settings, including in many public events, and take place across the city each year. While decriminalizing mobile vending will allow more access to permits, there is still a major lack of critical infrastructure that is needed to support these entrepreneurs. Veggielution knows firsthand the amount of resources, connections, and capital it takes to successfully operate a food cart. And currently, it is hard to imagine anyone being successful at starting their own business within the current environmental health standards that are set at the county and state level. I work hand in hand with our Eastside Grown entrepreneurs, and issues of around equitable infrastructure is the primary concern that we face. We are in constant need of affordable commercial kitchen space with childcare space. While we are fortunate for the opportunity to rent a space at Gardner Community Center, the timing is not always ideal for our entrepreneurs. So before we and our entrepreneurs can fully participate in these conversations around event logistics, we need to do some serious work to address the issues that prevent these entrepreneurs taking a step in the right direction. We must find innovative ways to work together and make changes so that these entrepreneurs even have a shot at getting their small businesses up to code. We hope that this bill will open up in the future conversations between the city and the county to work innovatively to make sure that these entrepreneurs are giving access to the resources that they need and are able to succeed and to make a profit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jason Minsky and Scott Neese.
Hello, everyone. Jason Minsky, Executive Director with Christmas in the Park. I'm here today just to talk a little bit about this issue. To become a street vendor, you have to go through a lot. You have to be permitted by the county health department. You have to have a peddler's permit. You have to abide by rules and regulations. In the 8+ years that I've been associated with Christmas in the Park, not once have I seen a street vendor that actually met all of the requirements to be a legal street vendor. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of individuals that do come from out of town that don't have the proper permits, that don't abide by rules and regulations that are set by the city. And unfortunately, we cause health issues. We cause fire issues using open propane and open flame. And this is an issue for the city to think about. Beyond the measurements and the ordinances that are included here, there's enforcement of this. And that's why I'm here to make sure that you guys are aware that right now, this is not being enforced. There's nobody to enforce these rules and regulations. The county health department will not come out and enforce health requirements unless the San Jose Police Department is by them. The reason for that is that certain vendors, not all, do get aggressive when they are approached. So they feel unsafe and do not feel the need to come out and put themselves at risk. So one thing to consider is how are these rules and regulations going to be enforced? Because as we've seen over the years, they are not being enforced. So I do want to make sure that you're aware that although you have a great set of guidelines and a lot of work has been done, you can pass any law or any ordinance you want, but unless somebody is enforcing them, they're no good. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor Jones, members of the council, Scott Neese, Executive Director of the San Jose Downtown Association. I'd like to talk a little bit about the nonprofits and the small businesses that occupy brick and mortar businesses and are trying to do events and are impacted by the peddlers. We're building an ice rink right now between the Fairmont and the Museum of Art. We paid $16,537, Dave, to the city for our permits. We now have to permit separately our hot chocolate concession. He's spending another $12,000 in permit fees to have a legal operation there. And invite you to all come out when we open. There's peddlers that are blocking the crosswalk, they're blocking the sidewalk. And it's not just the cart, and I'm not saying this because I'm a vegetarian and the bacon-wrapped hot dogs are a nightmare for me, but it's coolers, it's boxes of onions, and it's the trash that's accumulating there. And it's not just for the events, but it's also for the small businesses. You can go right downtown on any Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and you'll see the vendors. You can go out right now and see the grease stains at Post and First Street or 2nd and San Fernando Street. They're not cleaning up after themselves. You've heard this all before. Please enforce the rules. There's a lot of talk about equity here lately on all subjects. They should be permitted, and if they don't have the permit, there should be a consequence. It is a level playing field for the small businesses and the nonprofits that are trying to do right. This isn't about the stadiums and in the bigger events. It's really about the little guys that are right across the street from this. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to bring it back to council. Councilmember Perales.
Thank you. And thank you, staff, for your work on this as the opportunity was presenting itself in the state, pushing and now requiring cities to move forward with this and essentially begin to decriminalize these activities and allow us to, in safe manners, still require or put requirements in place similar to health code that the county is in charge of enforcing, as you heard from Jason and Scott. As we know, in the downtown core, that does not necessarily happen all the time. They do go out there and enforce that, but unfortunately not necessarily around Christmas in the park. But I too have looked for opportunities to work with our community members and actually get them into compliance and into carts that are not only where their business is permitted through the city, but their carts themselves are permitted through the county. And I want to say thank you to Casey Hill for being here and your partnership on the East Side Grown Food Carts that we piloted out in Christmas in the Park. And that's what we'd love to support and get more of. Those have been extremely successful now, not only at Christmas in the Park, but throughout our entire city at a number of events. And we want to be able to make that even more successful. And so I hope we can continue to support Vegilution in their partnership with us in helping our community members be able to make a living, but to do so in a way that is safe and that where they have the proper permits, and we're providing that opportunity for them to do that. And I also agree with and support my colleagues' memorandum in regards to looking at individual areas like SAP, Avaya, Convention Center for safe locations for peddlers that may be within that 500-foot restriction. I'll tell you that last year, after a number of years of headache, last year we saw some success actually at Christmas in the Park. And that's because, not because we had health code out there enforcing that, but it was because we actually did have our police officers where they were keeping the sidewalks clear, keeping areas from being sort of a permanent almost zone for the peddlers. But they weren't necessarily citing or taking carts away, no real enforcement, but just in the basics of clearing some of these areas and keeping them out of the actual Christmas in the Park operations, where vendors are paying, I think, around $10,000 to themselves sell at times bacon wrap hot dogs, which I've had those, Scott. I guess you have not, but they are as good as they smell. And what we saw was a lot of compliance from the mobile vendors, but they weren't going too far, and they certainly weren't going beyond 500 feet. A lot of times just going a block or so away. We saw a huge setup begin to occur initially, as Scott pointed out, in front of the ice rink, and then as that sidewalk area got sort of kept cleared, just setting up camp in front of the church, which was essentially just 100 or so feet away. And in just that buffer zone of having an opportunity of ensuring safety, not necessarily being heavy-handed in enforcement, made it, it may not have been perfect in Jason's eyes, but I know it made it a lot easier last year with Christmas in the Park. We'd love to see that again, and I'd love to see that with some of these other special event areas where, and that's exactly what this policy, right, is directing, and what we're not going to do, which is go out there heavy-handed and enforce and try to issue citations and remove these cards, but actually to stick to our guns in regards to the permitting of them, and in the free access of individuals around the sidewalks, and the actual safety of the carts, even though we don't manage that, the county does. So I'm comfortable with my colleagues' memorandum, and I'll move the staff recommendation in my colleague's memo.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Foley.
Thank you. I appreciate the report, and I appreciate the comments from those in the public who had some insight for us. Can you tell me who does enforce the restrictions of lack of licensing, lack of permits, that sort of thing? Who's responsible for enforcing that?
Well, up till January, police officers were primarily responsible for that. After this change at the state level, police officers don't write the administrative citations that it calls for. So they may ask them to move, but they're not going to be enforcing the permit of it. We have one staff specialist in my office who Monday through Friday can go out, gets calls or emails, and he will respond out to make contact with anyone out in the field currently.
So in response to the aggressive peddlers that are there and leaving messes and blocking sidewalks and things like that, how will your staff be addressing those after January, in January?
Yeah, the city manager's proposal now that this is an administrative issue rather than a criminal issue is that we have code enforcement inspectors be our first line for enforcement. We had good experience at the Super Bowl, collegiate football playoffs, some of the big events that we've had with code enforcement, doing the education and outreach and being the first line. The enforcement would happen, we anticipate, chiefly in cases where there's a safety issue, where either the ingress and egress is being blocked, or where there's concerns about pedestrian safety related to overcrowded sidewalks, for example, forcing pedestrians to go into the street, those kinds of situations. So we would, on a reactive basis to start, send the code enforcement inspectors out there first and see if they can get the vendors to move along. And if they needed some assistance with that, then the police department could be asked for additional support.
How quickly could code enforcement get out there? Because these are very event-driven, so they're at Christmas in the Park, they're on a Friday, can code enforcement run over there right away? I mean, what's the process for that? And I'm not looking at being heavy-handed, but I'm also looking to create safety and remove the and create a sense of fairness for the vendors who are paying to be there and the small businesses who are there too, paying a lot to be in those locations.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Foley. Rachel Roberts, Deputy Director for Code Enforcement. This would be focused more around special events, and we would be creating a team of inspectors as available to, in essence, patrol, if you will, the event over a certain time period, and it would we would lead with outreach and education in hopes of just having conversations and hoping to gain compliance through that means. So we implemented a similar model at our Super Bowl and college football playoff events, and it worked out rather successfully. So we wouldn't be, given these events are usually public property and so forth, we don't anticipate a lot of complaints coming in outside of these special events.
Okay. Would it be possible to get a report after Christmas in the Park or one of these special events as to the vendor, the peddlers, how they were handled, whether they were, how many times you had to go out there, whether there's a cast of characters who are continuing in violation, some sort of report that we could have, maybe, well, Christmas in the Park is coming up, so you might get some good data from that, just to let us know whether what we're doing is working.
I think since this item came up through the CED committee, that it would be appropriate to put a follow-up on the CED agenda for early next year, and we could provide a report about how it's going.
Okay. Do we need a friendly amendment of that, or you
We
take
can
that as
just do
staff?
that. We can just do that in the course of creating the work plan.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Esparza.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify something, which is, as I understand it, on page 3 of the staff memo, it's pretty specific about that we're talking about the overcrowding of sidewalks. We're not talking about health violations or enforcement around paying permits or paying to be at a public event. Is that correct?
That's staff's view at this point, where the priority for enforcement would be, is our chief concern is safety.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of share a story. Is I have a plight of one of my constituents who, where her landlord was using her status as a street vendor to harass and threaten her. And so, this is a very real issue for the vendors. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to really encourage more vendors and help them. It's really entrepreneurship. It's economic development here at the city. So yeah, I'm pleased to support, obviously, the motion on my colleague's motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Carrasco.
Hi, thank you. Since coming on council, I've been very supportive of our street vendors. I want to point out, just because I think it's worth mentioning. One is I'm very pleased that Casey is here. I think that Vegilution, with the leadership of Casey and her entire team, has done such a fantastic job. Those who are unfamiliar with the program should really just head on out there, because I think what we're doing as a city in partnership with our nonprofits, this is a perfect example of how well partnerships work, and the kind of opportunities that when these partnerships work this well, the kind of opportunities that blossom from it. and correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, but many of our folks find themselves in situations where these opportunities are the only opportunities available to them for different reasons. And I don't want to go too much into detail. For me, it's for concerns of the kind of risk that I might put them in. So I'll just say that this just creates a viable livelihood for them. And that's why I'm so pleased that it works. And we see that folks, all they're looking for is how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to put a roof over their head, and how they're going to survive in one of the most expensive cities in the country. And I'm always looking to see how we open more doors. I think that's what we have in common, Kim. You at a grander scale. I could never lure Google in or Samsung. I mean, I've been at some of the ribbon cuttings that you've managed to very skillfully bring to the city of San Jose, and it takes a huge team to be able to do that. But for some folks, it's just a tinier sliver of the apple pie of the American dream that we're hoping to be able to join with others to help achieve. And that's just sometimes just paying the electric bill, which is about to be turned off tonight or tomorrow. But this really supports their possibility of being here. And so for me, the memo that we were able to put forth with the mayor, which I'm really grateful that he was able to sign on to, is allowing them to enjoy some of that opportunity. And ironically, just the item before us was minority-led businesses that were just so aware that in San Jose, because of the diversity that we have, are really struggling to figure out how do we gather around this ever-growing table so that they can be part of it, and we're creating policies so that they can be part of it. For our mobile vendors, we're trying to create that as well, and helping them become more sophisticated and understand the laws and understand their place in it. And so this is just another step. And so we still have a long way, I think, but we're getting there. Again, the leadership speaks volumes as to where they're going to go, how they're going to get there. And I'm grateful again for what's happening at Vegilution. It's such a magical place in every sense of the word. Please get there on the first Saturday of every month. You'll have free yoga and meditation. It's a great time to do it. But it gets us back to our roots of organic planting and vegetarian eating. Scott, I think you would really enjoy it. But also, it's alive and well in terms of the spirit of people and how they want to survive. They don't want to be a burden on anybody. And so let's all figure out how to support folks so that they're not a burden on anybody, but rather they're here to be part of a dynamic city in terms of how they provide services and products to the rest of us. I love the mobile vendors. I love the restaurants that we have in San Jose. But even when you look at the Food Network shows, and you look at the top chefs, and they get really excited. Some of the inspirations that they get them from the street vendors, and they travel all over the world to get some of these inspirations, and it's because we're getting back to the roots of how we cook and how we eat, and where we get the very basics of our culinary cuisine. So thank you, Casey, for being here and for leading the East Side. Okay, well, thank you. I will be supporting the motion as well.
Thank you, and I just can't stop thinking about bacon-wrapped hot dogs. I just have a quick question for my colleagues who signed on to the memo. I just want to just have a better understanding when we say work with staff to identify designated safe locations. If they can't identify a safe location, what happens next? Are we requiring them to find a safe location, or just make a best case effort to do it? I'm just trying to understand your expectations. Anyone who wants to, Maya or Magdalena?
I'll chime in.
Okay.
Could you repeat your question? So if they don't find a safe location?
Yeah, so you're asking staff to try to identify a designated safe location. If they're not able to find or agree upon a safe location.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well, I think that this is about opening up economic opportunity. These folks have already been there. I don't know. I think that this is going to be a joint question and answer scenario here. They've already been there. They're already doing business. They're open for business. This is not about creating blockage for people to not get through. It's about figuring out how do we get them off the sidewalks so that they're not blocking all the folks that are coming out. But it's so that they can still be able to do business, but in a safe manner.
Yeah, my understanding is this is about ingress and egress for events. So I'll speak to Muni Stadium, for example. I love to go to Giants games and support. And it can get pretty busy, but it's also an area where there are already a lot of carts. It's part of the daily life for folks. If you want to step out for lunch or after work, you can very typically go to a cart and get something to eat. And so the intent was that those folks aren't impacted either by an event, right? Because the event is focused on ingress and egress to an event. So we're not inadvertently penalizing folks who are just trying to earn a living down the street. And like, for example, in Councilmember Perales' example, pushing someone out to the church. You're also welcome to come to the churches in District 7, whether it's a Giants game or the churches, best churros in town. Where we can move someone down. So again, it's affecting ingress and egress, or in the case of Muni Stadium, we're not inadvertently hurting mobile vendors who are used to selling, on Center Road or around the area. That was my intent.
Okay. And I'm assuming that's the understanding that staff has as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll convene the team and we'll do our very best to look at each one of these venues, and we'll work with the venue operators, and we'll try to find some space in the public, on public land or in the public right of way that we think can work. We obviously don't control the private lands, but for the public lands and the public right of way, we'll take a look and see if we can make this concept work.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Arenas.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I had a question about, I think one of the speakers talked about some of the issues that the county might face, and I thought, I don't know if we have any coordination, first of all, with county, and do we know what some of the issues that they've been dealing with and how they're dealing with them?
When it comes to the health inspector or the health, having the carts inspected over there is expensive. I think that's some of the issues that some people are having. But as far as having the inspectors come out to the city of San Jose, they will typically not come out. Even if called, they just won't come out.
So it sounds like maybe we don't have any real coordination with public health. I know that when we have our Fall Family Festival, we usually get a health permit for any of the food that we're serving. And then I think there's like one person that does, a huge area in San Jose. And so I wonder if we would benefit from involving the county to figure out what really are some of the issues that they're facing versus maybe some of the perceptions that people have in terms of what these mobile vendors present. And not to invalidate any of the concerns, because I hear it loud and clear. I absolutely agree that sidewalks should be clear, that people should be able to come in and out of an event safely, and having these mobile vendors in a specific area may be helpful. But I'm just wondering what kind of coordination we have with the county, and if they can offer any further support. I'll tell you that we have over at Welch Park, we have, and other parks, I'm just going to pick on Welch Park for now, but we have mobile vendors all day long, and most of them are use a pretty good common sense in terms of staying out of the sidewalks. They kind of, if they're going to remain in one place, they're off to the grass area and like I said, not on the sidewalk. And I don't know if there is any further need for a campaign to figure out either if there's outside folks who are coming in, but certainly any of the vendors who continue to participate in our events, that they are also given an opportunity to participate in Vegilution's wonderful programs, or any of the opportunities that we may provide with some of our agreements today. That's one of the things that I would like to see, if we can have more of a campaign, especially in whatever language that it is needed, in order to share with folks what some of the rules are, what some of the opportunities are, because I think both of those should be balanced. One, to know what the rules, so we can comply with them, and two, to be able to take advantage of some of the programming out there. This is a difficult topic to sometimes talk about, because we know that this is obviously these folks, these mobile vendors, this is their livelihood, right? And I want to make sure that we're respectful and very considerate about that. These folks are continuing to fight the good fight, right? They may be adding to already a 8-hour day or a couple of part-time jobs. And so I want us to always break this down and think of some of the individuals that we fight for up here on the dais, that are working families, that when we talk about rent control, when we're talking about any of the other issues that really impact some of our disadvantaged communities, that we make the connection that this is all one person, possibly, right? And so I just want us to continue to have them in mind, make sure that we're respectful, and have as much support as we can in order to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Let's vote. All right, next item is 5.1, actions related to the reconstruction of Columbus Park located at Coleman Avenue. And we have a presentation.
Good afternoon. John Cicerelli, Director of Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services. I'm here to my left with Nicole Burnham, our Deputy Director for Capital Programming, and to her left, Rob Tidmore, our Parks Manager, also in the Capital Program. We are excited to bring to you today what will conclude, we hope, upon your approval, the final expenditure in the year 2000 bond measure for parks with a soccer complex, small soccer complex at Columbus Park. In a minute, we'll show you sort of where that is and what that might look like. And ultimately, we're looking for approval to begin the process of design and community outreach. Measure P, the bond, if you're not aware, was a $228 million bond, built about 69 or improved 69 neighborhood parks, 7 regional, 9 community centers that it either improved or new, 5 trails, and also opening in spring, the Arcadia softball complex down near the East Ridge Mall. So this would, between the Arcadia ball fields and this complex, we would be fulfilling on our obligation in that bond to bring new recreational sports facilities to the city. We get high demand for these types of fields, so we're happy to get this project moving. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole to walk you through the presentation and what it is we're proposing to do.
Sure. So thanks, John. So I'm just going to start by orienting you a little bit. So what's in front of you is an aerial photo that shows the location of Columbus Park in the city. It's showing in pink, kind of in the center of the screen. So north is up on this figure, so you can see the San Jose Airport in the upper left corner, Highway 87 kind of cutting diagonally through the screen, and Columbus Park sits in the heart and right in the middle of Guadalupe Gardens, which is along Coleman Avenue, immediately south of the airport. So on this one, we just zoom in a little bit more to show you a little more detail of where Columbus Park is. So it is bounded by Taylor Street. Spring Street cuts through the middle of it. This has been a park since the 1960s. Possibly even before that. Some of you might remember in the 1970s and 60s and 50s, there was an actual neighborhood around here. In the 70s, the city started procuring the properties in that neighborhood and tore them down as part of the, using FAA funds as part of the airport expansion and upgrades. So that became Guadalupe Gardens, but Columbus Park remains as a chartered parkland of the city of San Jose. It is, and it's a pre-existing compatible land use, right? So one of the important things that shows on this map is the dotted line in yellow around the green spaces. That's the airport intersafety zone. So that's the airport that, the area that's regulated by the airport, and they influence the things that happen there and the density of development. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Rob to let him explain the actual project to you.
Thank you, Nicole. Here you can see Columbus Park in its current state. This image is rotated relative to the previous image, with north being to the upper right corner. The park is 9.4 acres in size, and as Nicole mentioned, bounded by West Taylor Street to the south, Asbury Street to the north, and Spring Street bisects the park. The park area is 9.4 acres, and amenities include softball fields, basketball courts, sand volleyball courts, and horseshoe pitches, which are home to the San Jose chapter of the Northern California Horseshoe Pitchers Association. Usage of these amenities is generally low, except for the horseshoe pitches, which are well used. The park is in poor condition, and the sports fields are essentially unplayable. Various illicit activities heavily impact the restroom in the northeast corner, and some park users also report feeling unsafe when visiting. The challenges and low use of Columbus Park are partially a result of the park's distance from residential areas. The closest housing is over a quarter mile away. And as a result, Columbus really lacks the local caretakers and eyes on the street they would typically find in a neighborhood park, and that help to activate and secure it. This condition, as Nicole mentioned, is unlikely to change due to restrictions on residential development near the airport. So therefore, creating a regional attraction, such as a soccer facility, is really one of the only ways to increase visitors and help alleviate some of those social challenges that have resulted from low daily use. No funding source is currently available to improve Columbus Park's poor condition outside of the Measure P money. So the possibility of renovating the park in conjunction with building the soccer facility, we feel is an efficient use of funds, and it's one of the things that led PRNS to consider this site as an optimal location for soccer. What you're seeing on the screen now is the first of two preliminary concepts that Public Works and PRNS developed to investigate the feasibility of building a soccer facility here. Both concepts would require a complete redesign and reconstruction of the park. This first concept, as you can see, accommodates 2 soccer fields overlain with softball fields. This overlay method is spatially efficient as you're putting 2 fields in the same space, and we've used it successfully at John Mize Park over in West San Jose. In addition to the softball overlay, we're also able to accommodate the existing basketball courts and the horseshoe pitches in the center of the site. And just as a side note, this is very much a preliminary concept, and so the location and type of amenities that you're seeing here will be developed during the design process with community input. There are 2 design issues that we'll need to resolve as this moves forward. The first is that both concepts propose the closure of Spring Street, as you can see, and this is very much PRNS's preference, as it really enhances the function and value of the park. It is also consistent with the proposed closure of Spring Street to the north of the park between Asbury and Heading in the Guadalupe Gardens master plan. And the second issue under consideration is converting the roads around the perimeter of the park to one-way flow, with the exception of West Taylor Street, of course, which would slow and calm traffic and accommodate angled parking in the street around the park. We're currently working with DOT to study both of these issues in more detail, and we will continue to do so as design moves forward. This is the second of the 2 preliminary concepts showing here how 3 soccer fields could sit onto the site. To fit 3 fields, as you can see, they must be rotated 90 degrees. As a result, these fields are slightly smaller than the fields in Concept 1, but still fall within the official FIFA range of field dimensions, and they're also comparable to other competitive fields in the Bay Area. Obviously, adding a 3rd field does reduce the park capacity for other uses, but we can still accommodate the basketball courts and the horseshoe pitches in the center. As far as cost goes, there is $21 million in the soccer reserve left over from Measure P, and initial cost estimates suggest that the scope you've seen today can be built with the full amount of that funding. And I'll turn it back over to Nicole.
Sure, and before I wrap up, I'll just say that we have been talking with the airport extensively about this plan and this concept. We didn't want to bring it forward until we were comfortable that they were going to be able to support it. Our big question in particular was around lighting and making sure that we could light all 3 fields or 2 fields, as the case may be, so that they can get played aggressively. One of the advantages of this location for us is because there are no neighbors, we can light the we can light this field and play it probably more extensively than we could in a neighborhood park where we may not, we may be impacting residential. So our request for you today is to approve us moving forward to use the rest of the Measure P money to redesign Columbus Park. As Rob mentioned, there's significant funds sitting in reserve for Measure P. We'd like to pull $3 million of that out to use for design, and then we would come back to release the rest of the reserve as we move into construction and Public Works moves the bid forward. With that, we're happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you for that presentation. And I have one public speaker, Jason Su.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor and City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jason Su, and I am the Executive Director of the Guadalupe River Park Conservancy. I'm here to express support for the design and reconstruction of Columbus Park, which is nestled within the Guadalupe Gardens. The Conservancy's mission is to promote the active use and development of the Guadalupe River Park and Gardens. We envision the river park as San Jose's civic greenway and the premier urban riverfront of the Bay Area. We believe Columbus Park would activate that portion of parkland and provide enhanced recreation activities that would benefit the entire Guadalupe River Park network. I commend the work of PRNS staff, particularly the leadership of John Cicerelli, Nicole Burnham, and Rob Tidmore for moving this project forward. And I would also like to take advantage of this opportunity to express the enthusiasm and gratitude the Conservancy has with the partnerships we're building with PRNS, City Council, and the Mayor. It's an exciting time to be thinking about our riverfronts. Thank you.
Thank you. Bringing it back to council, Councilmember Perales.
Yeah, thank you, staff. Just really excited about this opportunity. It was all really said in the presentation, but for my colleagues that maybe have not been out near Columbus Park, you're not alone. Not many people have, unfortunately. And the users that we do have there know that actually the image that you showed makes the park look a lot better than it actually looks physically going to it. So it needs a lot of TLC. And unfortunately, because of the area that it's in, there is no development happening in and around there. So it's not going to get any parks development fees. And so this is really our only opportunity. And as my colleagues also know, we are no longer getting the multiple soccer fields in and around the area. We have, just a few over by the Earthquake Stadium, but we moved that other opportunity that we had there. So this is really close in proximity to that, and it gives us a great opportunity to turn what are currently just underutilized softball fields and well-utilized horseshoe fields or horseshoe pits to now multi-purpose use fields where we know, and John, as you've already told me, we expect these to be reserved immediately upon completion of the soccer fields because we are deficient in our ability for all of the youth soccer that we have out there and in the programs that are going on for soccer, and still have the overlay of the softball fields, which is going to be great. And I really appreciate the closing down of Spring Street, making this one now full connected park. There's not going to be any homes and anything built out there that's going to need that. In fact, Spring is today used as a cut through. And when my team and I were out there doing a cleanup, cars are just flying right by. They don't care for the stop sign there because there's just nobody around. So cutting that down or cutting it off as a cut through is really going to help as well. And I think it's just going to be a much more vibrant park. Appreciate the salvaging of the horseshoe pits because somehow they've managed to stay active, which is great, and we want to keep that as an asset there. I would love to try and see if we could achieve the 3 soccer fields, and a thought just dawned on me. It probably is maybe not possible, but if you can go back to the image of the 3 soccer fields. I'm looking at the Google map of the same area and wondering if there's an opportunity to expand actually over Asbury Street and actually what would move Asbury Street, a little bit further north. You're now talking about, repaving a whole new street. And so, I mean, it's obviously more costly effort. But what you mentioned was that it sort of shrinks down the soccer field's footprint. But you did state that it stays within compliance, I guess, of something. FIFA. The size of the field themselves?
Yes, the fields shown right there are 220 feet wide by 345 feet long, and they are well within the FIFA has a range of soccer fields. There's not a particular size that a field needs to be, and these that you're seeing here are within that range. Similar to Kezar Stadium up in San Francisco and the Cal Stadium at Berkeley.
Okay, so this would be sufficient. We're not going to be turning away any interested parties that are going to say, wait a second, these fields are too small.
Correct.
Okay, with that considered, then you can, although it would be nice to have an even bigger park, but fitting within the footprint that we have and not having to add any more dollars to it, I'd be comfortable with that. But if staff wants to go back and chew on that one and think that there's an opportunity to grow the size, by all means. Otherwise, I am enthusiastically supporting this, and thank you again for staff, your work on this, and hope my colleagues can support it. So I move the recommendation.
Second. Thank you, Councilmember Jimenez.
Thank you. I just had a question. So, someone along the same lines. So I, addition to, or in support of what Councilmember Peralta said, I think we need more fields, not less. So I think 3, very happy with that. But I noticed that's not necessarily in the recommendation, and so maybe I missed it. But it seems we're moving this forward. At what point in the process do you all determine? Is it the design phase where you decide if this is actually feasible, or what upfront work has been done to determine that?
Yeah, we will, what you're seeing here is a very high-level concept evaluation. We don't have base mapping. We haven't fully mapped all the utilities, so there's a lot of kind of that really boring detail engineering work that we need to do, and we'll do that as we start to move into design, and then that will confirm or make us give pause to whether we can fit 2 or 3 fields. The other thing we want to be really conscious of, too, is the cost. We don't want to need to, we're talking about 3 artificial turf fields here, so we want to make sure we can stay within the project budget. So those are all, as we go through the design process, we'll start, kind of iterating. We do a step of design, we look at cost again, step of design, look at cost again. And so as we start to refine, we'll look at that, and one option might be to have 2 of them be artificial turf and 1 of them be a grass soccer field, with the idea that maybe at some point in the future we could come back for it if we can't afford it. So those are kind of the decision points we'll be making along the way.
Okay, and then, so thank you for that. The other question that came to mind is, I know, and certainly not to throw a wrench in this process, but I remember some time back, just when the, I think it was the audit report as it relates to Powell Stadium in East San Jose came about, there was some, not talk specifically about this source of funding, but thinking about how do we rethink that, additional fields or converting some of the fields there, some of that work. And so what I'm curious about is this effectively, asking us to move this forward, is that this is going to use up all the money, so there is in effect 0 money that would go to Powell?
Well,
Sure. So in this last budget cycle, we actually did have money approved, about $3 million, to convert the turf field at Powell into artificial, and we had money set aside to do a master plan for the larger site to figure out what are the needs there, what does the community want, how can that evolve. But looking out past that, there aren't great funding sources for any of that,
Right.
but at least you get the ball rolling on what that should look like.
Okay, cool. That answers my question. I hadn't remembered that, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. First question, so I like both designs. I see that the first design with just 2 soccer fields had futsal, which is a growing sport, and I think it's cool to have that as well. What kind of outreach is going to be done to determine what should be included in here?
Yeah, great question. So our protocol for outreach on all our capital projects involves 3 meetings. We'll try to do 3 stakeholder meetings, which we'll need to coordinate with the Conservancy. I think this is going to be a little tricky because there's not a broad community around it, neighborhood. So we will do some engagement meetings. We'll work with the Conservancy on doing some direct engagement. And we also often are doing online surveys and outreach that we have found to be really effective. Working through Nextdoor, the council offices are helping us do that, push that out as well. We've gotten really good responses in other areas we've worked in, some of them being yours.
Yeah, we've done 2 surveys, and I
Yeah.
think you reach people who aren't going to come to a meeting,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
who do go to parks.
Mhm. And I think I agree with you. We're not sure that basketball is the right. I mean, basketball is what's there now, but we agree there might be some more interesting and modern amenities that might want to go there, or combinations of. Put a net around fencing around a basketball court, and suddenly it can be futsal when no one's playing basketball. So we'll look at some things like that as well.
That's great. And so the $3 million for design, is the outreach, are the costs for outreach included in that $3 million? I'm trying to get a sense of what's included in the $3 million.
Yes, the outreach is included. I'll let Rob give you the details on the rest.
So the $3 million includes the project delivery for the project. So that would be cost for design, hiring a consultant, doing the public outreach, as well as the construction administration of the project.
Okay, and so it's a level of design that gets all the way detailed, all the way to construction ready?
Yes.
Okay, great. And what's the timeline for the project?
That's a good question. I think we're still a little early to flesh out a timeline at this time.
Well, and I think our hope was to move pretty quickly into executing a contract and agreement. This will be with Public Works. They'll execute an agreement with a consultant, and we'll be doing design through most of 2020, and hopefully putting shovels in the ground in 2021 if all goes as planned. Would be our expectation, probably sometime late in 2021. And this is a pretty significant design undertaking, bigger than most projects that we do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Camus.
Yeah, I had a similar question to Councilmember Davis, because I'm not sure that, is there a huge demand for horseshoes, or there is? Because I have a huge, we have bocce ball courts in Amadon Lake, and they get used very much so. I don't know if, horseshoes are.
There is at this site, I will tell you, they're really the only active participants on this entire
really?
site. These two
Okay.
fields.
All right. Then. I take that back.
Yeah. They do.
Horseshoes it is. All right.
They've been very good stewards with what they do have out there. They take care of it. It is not impacted because they're very active with it. So we feel that's something that we're going to hear in the community meetings. But again, what goes in the middle in terms of amenities is subject to change through the community process. What do we hear from the leagues or local neighborhood associations, et cetera, any of the stakeholders? So when we come back, we'll have, this is what we heard, this is the amenities they want.
Yeah, well, I'm all with it, doing the outreach. I didn't know that the kids played horseshoes these days. And
it's an adult thing.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't think kids know what horseshoes are, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. No more questions. Let's vote. Okay, we're on to item 7.2, actions related to the San Jose Clean Energy Residential Transition to Time of Use Electric Rates. Last item.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Lori Mitchell, and I'm the Director of Community Energy. And today I am joined by Zach Strike. He is our Deputy Director of Account Management and Marketing, and he will present this item.
Good afternoon. So before talking about the transition, first a brief background on how electricity is generally sold today to residential customers. So almost everyone in PG&E territory buys their electricity on what's called a tiered rate. So everyone, depending on where you live, a climate zone is allotted a certain amount of baseline energy at a lower rate. And then if you use more than that, you move into what's called tier 2. And so up to four times more of that energy is at a middle rate. And then if you go over that, you can see a very high rate is charged for everything above that in tier 3. So the proposal is to move to charging energy instead of how much you're using in a given month, to charge the time of day. And the peak price, the peak time is moving to be between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. And the other hours, it's cheaper. There's still this notion of a baseline where the baseline energy is at a cheaper price. Why the transition? So in 2015, the CPUC, that's the California Public Utility Commission, ordered all investor-owned utilities, including PG&E, to make this change. The reasons for doing that are listed above: to make the prices that customers are paying align with the cost of serving the customers, also to change when people are using energy, to change their behavior, to assist with the transition to a renewable energy economy. Council may remember the duck curve, which we learned about during the study session several weeks ago. And you'll recall that this steep ramp to the current peak of 4 to 9 is a challenge, and that's largely with less renewable energy at that time, so to thin out the belly of the duck and make the head, the neck a little bit less steep is the goal. So PG&E will be making this transition to all of their customers over the course of 16 to 18 months, beginning in October 2020. Santa Clara County, the rest of Santa Clara County will begin, and we will be number 2. They'll be offering bill protection, so that is to say anyone who chooses to go along with this transition will not pay more than they would have on their old rate in the first year. And so we are recommending that San Jose Clean Energy also do the transition, and including with the bill protection, we expect, based on pilot results, which I can talk about in a moment, that customers will save money, usage will go down, as well as greenhouse gas emissions. Customers will receive a lot of notifications about their choices under the plan. So the default will be that the do-nothing scenario is that customers will be transitioned to this main time of use rate of 4 to 9, and that is a TOU-C rate. Customers will receive notifications that look like this and are included as an attachment to the memo, which will call out clearly what their usage of the last 12 months, what they would have paid on this new rate, what they paid on a tiered rate, and then, as you can see, a different time of use option. So notifications will begin going out 90 days before the transition, and there will be another one at 30 days. There will also be emails, and some customers will, CARE and FARA customers, those lower income program customers, will get extra outreach, and we will target them more as well. So I should say that customers can, they can opt out or choose a rate going online, phone call. There's also going to be a self-addressed stamp envelope. Remember how that used to be? And those will be all co-branded PG&E and San Jose Clean Energy, all those notifications. So not everyone will be transitioned. You can see the list above. Customers on special medical rates, rates who are large users of energy for medical reasons, net energy metering customers, and several other classifications. But approximately 80%, which is about 260,000 customer accounts, will be transitioned. PG&E, as part of a statewide campaign, will be launching, is going to be everywhere. You can see $126 million mass marketing, including billboards, radio, TV, encouraging people to get out of the 4 to 9 hour. They're calling that the golden hour, really branding that as the time when dirty energy is used. It'll be running beginning in May of next year in the South Bay through the transition in multiple languages. So this graph, I mentioned before, so PG&E, there was a pilot conducted with approximately 153,000 customers in a number of the different PG&E territories and also some CCA territories around us. And the participation rate was quite high, and a number of customers stuck with it. Awareness was high. PG&E had conducted a lot of testing about their notices and so forth. So we have confidence that things are going to go largely the way that we're talking to you today because of the extensive testing and so forth that was done. You can see that most customers are saving money doing this. And so these are annual totals. So the largest graph, the largest percentage, the largest bucket, excuse me, are people who have almost no change, between $5 saving or $5 more expensive across the whole year. And the average customer who is saving is going to save about $15 over the course of the year. The average customer who has increased costs is going to be just about $14. So as I mentioned, we're proposing to offer bill protection for that first year. We think that will cost San Jose Clean Energy approximately $570,000 during the first year. but want to emphasize that that is revenue neutral. So customers will be charged under the new rates through the year, and at the end, their usage will be run through the rate that they were on before, as well as the new rate, and any difference in any dollars that they've spent extra will be returned to them. So you can see there in the table two cases. The base case, the max case, I should say, would be if every customer who receives a notification and is eligible for the transition and would save takes the transition. So some customers, they see the transition, they don't want to be bothered by it, they don't believe it, they don't trust it, they don't like change. So some people got those notifications and said no thank you, and even though it said that they would be worse off. So that's the base case if approximately 24% did that, and the max case, but not so different, approximately $2.5 to $2.9 million. And we would have procurement cost savings as a result of this because that peak energy is the most expensive energy for us to procure as well. So that's why the net revenue would be a little bit lower to us. Did I miss it? Oh, I'm sorry. The second part of the memo, we are requesting for approval to have the ability to match any PG&E rate structure while maintaining our 1% discount, to allow us to be nimble and respond to new rates which are created by PG&E and keep things simple for our customers and remain competitive. So for example, in November of this year, PG&E is launching new time of use rates for non-residential customers, which are optional until next year, November 2020, when they become mandatory. So this is not just an abstract notion. This is coming quite soon. So again, our recommendation is to approve the transition and to approve the rate design allowing us to match any PG&E rate structure. Thank you, and we'll have time for questions.
Thank you for that presentation. I don't see any cards, and I don't see any of my colleagues who have questions. So if I can get a motion to... Actually, I spoke too soon. Councilmember Canvas.
Sorry, Vice Mayor. I just want to make sure. Thank you for including the 1% in your supplemental memo. We just want to make sure that people are aware that they're not going to be having higher rates. The other thing that I want to make sure is when we are providing this communication, we are going to be comparing, like, hey, here's how much you pay now, and here's how much you'll pay under this plan according to your current usage, right? So that people are not confused. I don't think you understand how many phone calls we've had that we had to just we mostly send them to you guys, but they've had like issues with like, hey, I'm paying so much more, you know. But after you guys calm them down, they're all really happy customers. But before that, they need to see a side-by-side comparison, and I think it's really important to do that before you flip the switch, if you will.
Yes. So this slide, and again, this notification, which is an attachment to the memo.
Yeah.
So that I'm pleasantly surprised that PG&E suggested to present it there so cleanly. That again, this is based. Here's where you are. Here's what the transition means, and your lowest rate is called out at the bottom there. But yes, point well taken. We will emphasize that in our outreach.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And did anybody make a motion yet?
A motion, but I need a second.
Second, then.
All right. Thank you. Let's vote.
How can we make it?
Actually, we're going to open forum, so I will call. Are you Steve Tillman? It's actually it's your time to come up and speak right now. Perfect timing. No worries.
And the main reason I was here was because of a homeless situation that is on Capitol Avenue, about 100 feet south of Mervin's Way, and then one on Mervin's Way as you go on to Capitol Expressway. I have been dealing with the police. I have called every number that I have found, have been told to call in the city of San Jose. Nothing has been done about this absolute mess. My wife and I drive up and down Capitol Expressway quite a lot. We live close to there. We go to 680. We go to places. We have seen men out there urinating through the fence out onto Capitol Expressway. My wife doesn't want to see that. I don't want to see it. And like I said, I've called everybody that I can possibly think of to call, and nothing has been done about it. I've had police sergeants call me and say, "We'll do something about it tomorrow, sir. We'll do something about it." Nothing is getting done. Something needs to be done. I don't know what the solution is for the homeless situation, but something needs to be done. As about this last thing, about the San Jose clean energy or whatever, I received no notifications of any kind about it. I was on a balanced payment plan through PG&E. I got a bill and noticed, oh, my bill went up. No, because I was no longer on a balanced payment plan because I'm paying the city of San Jose instead of paying PG&E. When I called Clean Energy, they said, yes, sir, we can put you back, but you're going to go back to PG&E, and then you're going to pay, not going to be on your balanced payment plan because they will put you for 6 months. They will put you on just a regular payment to where if it goes up, it goes up. If it goes down, it goes down. I'm on a fixed income. This didn't help me at all. And then, like I said, so I called back, and so I was forced to stay on the San Jose Clean Energy system where I did not want to.
Thank you very much, sir. I don't have a name, but it says legal issues.
Last time we did. I guess the issues have cleared up. Thank you. As regards Vice Mayor Jones, City Manager Sykes, pleasure, Assistant City Attorney Moran, Councilmember Camas, Perales, Diep, and Jimenez. If I didn't say that right, I'm sorry. With regard to my issues, they concern disadvantaged, medical issue, and rent control, disability. I find myself in desperation given the current situation. It's out of control. I am speaking with Mr. Preminger. He wants to work with this, but we need to talk about what we have before when I pointed out the profiteers last time I was here. And rightfully, you said that the money's not getting down to individuals who need it. I have a very serious medical condition. We can talk about that at some other time, but I need to know the council member to address regarding this issue. I don't think it's City Manager Sykes, but whoever finds themselves the du jour and person who's been assigned the greatest responsibility. I don't know if that's Jimenez. You seem to be the spokesperson for the people. And I need to address the issues concerning San Jose because I do live in San Jose, but I am also a resident of Santa Clara County. And Mr. Preminger says that this is an urgent situation to work with him continuously. I am interviewing, I should say, because wait list has been available, but I'm afraid of being marginalized because the wait lists are too long. There's anything available anymore. And I'm in a very bad, unhealthy living situation with a landlord who uses his status to intimidate and bully. And I'm told by a civil attorney that he is in violation of codes that is for illegal partitioning, illegal tenant's number, and illegal tenant in a carport in the back, and then cash changing hands, and it's these transients and the police, and I made 2 police reports, so I'm in urgent need. My case manager and I are going on an interview, Sunnyvale. I don't know if I can get in there because the business being what it is, as you mentioned aptly last time, you and also Don Rocha and Mr. Perales and Mr. Diep and Jimenez mentioned that there is the issue of the unfairness economically or disadvantaged issue. So I need to address that. I can't do education.
Thank you very much.
Who would I refer to, sir?
Actually, there's a council member who wants to speak. He's the spokesperson of the people.
Okay, very
No,
good.
Councilmember Jimenez?
I was simply going to ask if I can ask a question, where in San Jose you live, because I think that's going to be the easiest way to figure
It
out.
is just behind Willow Glen now, but it's still, you can't get out of this grind, and I don't have enough money to live Social Security. They're telling me my rent should only be $250, $270, but they're not honoring that. The laws have changed, and they're not helping me. They told me to take it to council, so that is Officer Villa Court of Social Security. They will provide no more
Okay.
Social Security money. So I don't know what we should do for plans. We can address this with Mr. Preminger.
Okay, if
You
you-
seem very apt, and he
Yeah.
wants to continue in the planning process.
So if you allow us, maybe we'll scramble together, or,
I brought it before the city council today, not the city, the Santa Clara County Council over there. I'm a little bit overwhelmed, I'm sorry. But they understand that it's an urgent need, so then I have to bring it here, I'm sorry. I'm a little slow. Yes? Can I?
Mine or of Councilmember Foley's, and we can figure that out if you
Come here?
If you come up over
thank
here,
you.
yeah.
All right, meeting is adjourned.